Otaku in the Marvel DC Universe. Hey, fanfic family. So glad to see you here again to continue this incredible adventure. As always, kindly remember, this story is 100% fiction, so don't go looking for dimensional portals in your closet. All rights to this fantastic novel belong to the original author. We're just your humble narrators of epic tales. Are you enjoying the fanfic? Show it by subscribing to our YouTube channel and dropping us a like. And if you're impatient for more exclusive content, our Patreon is your happy place. Chapter 401 Shinra Heavenly Expedition. Swish swish swish. Soon, several figures approached rapidly from afar, landing beside Liang Yue one after another. Leading the group were Naruto and Sasuke, followed closely by Hinata, Neji, Sakura, Lee, and others, mostly members of the Konoha 12. The fact that they could arrive so easily on the Ten Tails back indicated that the pressure from the heavenly tribulation was significant enough that even the Ten Tails had begun to harbor, hoping to seek help. Unfortunately, the Ten Tails clearly didn't understand what a heavenly tribulation was. Recklessly increasing the number of people would only make things more dangerous. Sure enough, the moment these individuals landed, bearing the oppressive force above, the tribulation clouds in the sky sensed their presence and, with a thunderous roar that seemed to express anger, expanded several times over. The sound of thunder was deafening, and the original bright blue lightning even began to show hints of scarlet. The Ten Tails beneath them immediately felt something, instinctively retracting its body, its skin shrinking, and every hair standing on end. Among the newcomers, the weaker ones, like Sakura, found it difficult even to stand. Naruto and Sasuke were also sweating at their foreheads, their brows furrowed tightly. Seeing this, Liang Yue's lips twitched, and he said weakly to the others beside him, "Didn't I tell you not to come? How could we let you face this alone, Chunkyu?" Sasuke turned his head, a smile of relief on his face, as he heard Liang Yue's words. Hearing Sasuke's words, Naruto beside him also wore an expression of agreement, while Hinata and the others looked at him with equally firm gazes. "You've misunderstood the nature of this tribulation. This is my own affair," Liang Yue quickly explained to them. Upon seeing this as the main subject of this heavenly tribulation, Liang Yue keenly sensed that the tribulation clouds in the sky seemed to be nearing completion. However, in his haste, he obviously didn't have enough time to explain the situation in detail, leading everyone to misunderstand his words. "How can you say that? Although we don't know what we'll face next, as friends, we will never desert you." Naruto seemed to be bursting with enthusiasm, giving Liang Yue a thumbs up and showing a hearty smile. "We want to help you, Chunkyu." Sakura clenched her fists, looking at him as she spoke. "You'll only be a hindrance if you stay. Don't worry. As the undisputed candidate for the next Hokage, I'm very strong now, you know." "Chunkyu, your eyes seem to have changed a bit." Shinra Tensei whoosh. Seeing that Naruto still wanted to step forward, Liang Yue used his spiritual power to transmit his voice to everyone. After confirming that this little blonde had been stopped by Sasuke, he secretly breathed a sigh of relief and once again focused his gaze on the tribulation clouds above. Half looking at the lightning vortex that had quietly reverted to a bright blue color, Liang Yue subconsciously clenched his fists, calming the emotions in his heart. The next moment, he suddenly clasped his hands together. Snap! When he separated them again, another parasitic seed was already in his palm. However, compared to the previous translucent, fluorescent seed, the parasitic seed at this moment seemed to have completely materialized. Just like a real seed, the grooves on the surface and the subtle textures were clearly visible. Then, he looked at the Ten Tails beneath him, which seemed to be playing possum, a curve appearing at the corner of his mouth as he shouted softly, "Monster, I want you to help me transcend this tribulation." Saying that, Liang Yue suddenly squatted down, pressing his palms directly onto the Ten Tails back. In an instant, the seed that had been floating in his palm was successfully integrated into its body once more. Compared to the previous parasitic seed, the power of this technique at this moment was naturally also rising, incomparable to what it was before. Under the support of the Foundation Establishment Stage's liquid true essence, the parasitic seed not only greatly increased the speed of absorbing energy, but also had a qualitative leap in the upper limit of energy it could contain. As a result, the Ten Tails at this moment began to shrink rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eye. The moment the seed was planted, gradually, as time passed, Liang Yue was even able to stand on the ground with both feet. At the same time, with a rapid shrinking of the Ten Tails, what replaced it was a cyan golden towering tree. The thick trunk alone was more than 10 meters in diameter, and the height was nearly 100 meters. This was because Liang Yue focused on putting most of the absorbed chakra into its internal structure and energy balance. Unlike the bare chakra divine tree that the 10 tails transformed into in the third stage, the giant tree in front of him was lush with branches and leaves, and the canopy was like a series of umbrellas, each leaf adorned with scattered gold. And with a small breeze, from a distance, it looked like a tree of gold was swaying in the wind. It appeared exceptionally beautiful and graceful. Liang Yue leaped lightly at this moment, and his entire body had already reached the top of the giant tree with one leg bent. He stood there in a steady posture, looking up at the surging tribulation clouds above. Let me see if this heavenly tribulation is really like the legends say, a calamity for cultivators. Because it was his first time undergoing tribulation, Liang Yue's mind was filled with caution and a hint of curiosity. Besides being interested in the origin of this heavenly tribulation, he was even more curious about the power of this lightning tribulation. Therefore, in order to personally experience the mysteries within, Liang Yue decided to withstand a blow first and see what it was like. Crack! The lightning tribulation above obviously didn't disappoint him. At the moment when the lightning in the center of the tribulation clouds reached its peak, a bolt of bright blue heavenly lightning as thick as a bucket immediately struck down with the speed of lightning. It struck Liang Yue's chest directly. In an instant, Liang Yue only felt his whole body numb and abnormal, as if the sensation of his entire body had disappeared, and his mind was blank. A burnt smell immediately surged into his nostrils. However, this didn't seem to be a big deal. The source of this burnt smell only came from the clothes on his body, and the numbness that filled his whole body at that moment began to rapidly weaken. The moment the thunder firewood behind Liang Yue rose from numbness, it degenerated into tingling. From being completely unconscious, it decreased to containing a trace of comfort in just 3 to 5 seconds. The impact of this lightning tribulation had disappeared without a trace, and the thunder firewood had completely absorbed it into his body. In this process, all Liang Yue had to pay was a piece of clothing. Chapter 402, The Otsutsuki Inheritance. It can be done. After successfully dissolving the first lightning tribulation, Liang Yue's heart was filled with confidence, and corresponding courage arose. Although this lightning tribulation is indeed powerful, it hasn't reached a level that I can't withstand. Relying solely on my physical body to withstand the lightning tribulation is somewhat, but if I combine it with the intent of thunder, fire, and wood, it's not impossible to achieve. The reason why Liang Yue still intended to continue using his body to withstand the lightning tribulation after and during the first one was naturally because there were benefits to doing so. The power of the lightning tribulation that Liang Yue had absorbed into his body earlier had now been transformed into pure lightning attribute energy and stored in his danchan. Although they seem incomplete, they can emit an awe-inspiring aura and double the power of the heavenly lightning. This power must not be wasted. Incomplete only means that the amount absorbed is too small to reach the point of qualitative change. Too little means I should accumulate it bit by bit. Furthermore, after being struck by the lightning tribulation, my body, including the spiritual power within, has also undergone a transformation, becoming more condensed and stable. Even the divine sense, which was somewhat restless under the pressure of the heavenly tribulation, has begun to stabilize. It's as if my whole body has been tempered, and although the extent of this transformation is not significant enough to reach a certain magnitude, it is undoubtedly beneficial to me. From this perspective, this is not a heavenly tribulation at all, but a fortuitous opportunity bestowed by heaven in the dark. With this realization, Liang Yue was immediately overjoyed, clenched his fist forcefully, and revealed a faint smile on his face at the same time. With a thud, the surface of his body, which had been scorched red by the lightning, was instantly covered with a set of black and white spiritual power armor. This was also an additional manifestation of the Otsutsuki clan's bloodline power. Leaving aside the previous Kinsegan state, after advancing their strength to the 6 paths level, which is the foundation establishment stage, the energy produced by individuals in this clan, thanks to the gifts of bloodline inheritance, can almost effortlessly condense into clothing that suits their desires. In essence, this is actually a superficial application of yin-yang release. It's also a powerful means to directly transform illusion into reality and construct matter with energy. Therefore, the Otsutsuki clan's bloodline that Liang Yue now possesses is definitely a special inheritance power worth exploring in depth. It's like it's directly engraved on the Otsutsuki's genes, and as time passes and the realm continues to sublimate, various secret information will emerge continuously. Take Liang Yue at this moment, for example. Although he has only just broken through the realm, that information has already appeared in clusters. Various unfamiliar knowledge and power usage methods that seem instinctive involuntarily filled his mind. That's right, I was wondering why the Otsutsuki in the original storyline all had countless tricks up their sleeves and could use various bizarre secret techniques with ease. But why could I only pick up scraps from others? It turns out I was just on the way. Speaking of Kaguya's underworld. Boom. As if annoyed that someone dared to be distracted while undergoing tribulation, just as Liang Yue was absent-mindedly thinking and had a slightly wandering an emotion on his face, a blue lightning tribulation suddenly fell from the top of the sky with overwhelming force, accompanied by a deafening cracking sound. The lightning was like a spear piercing from the air, straight and solid, so swift that it was impossible to react in time. In the blink of an eye, it had already pierced into Liang Yue's chest. With a soft sound, Liang Yue was directly knocked into the dense canopy of trees below. Judging by the momentum, this lightning tribulation seemed to want to kill him directly. Thousands of branches and leaves suddenly burst apart, scattering like golden glitter. Sizzle, crack, buzz. However, Liang Yue had made full preparations after all, and the giant tree beneath him was not an ordinary thing adhering to the characteristics of the thunder, fire, and wood lineage. It also had the ability to absorb the power of thunder and fire. In just a few breaths, it had diverted the lightning tribulation and was then reabsorbed into Liang Yue's body like all rivers returning to the sea. It seems I was still a little careless. Although I knew that the power of this heavenly tribulation would increase with each strike, the power of this attack could directly penetrate half of a parasitic tree cultivated by a massive amount of chakra. I still have to be more cautious. Brushing off the broken leaves on his head, Liang Yue slowly stood up from among the branches with a slight thought. He secretly gathered the scattered trees again, and the gaze he turned to the layers of tribulation clouds above his head also began to become brighter. Creak gurgle. After a burst of obscure movement, the giant tree beneath him regained its uprightness, and the layers of golden umbrella-like canopy once again sent Liang Yue to the top of the crown. Finally, he even left the tree entirely. Quietly floating in mid-air, the innate intent of thunder, fire, and wood behind him reappeared. The original light-like illusion did not change with the improvement of his realm, and it was still like a piece of brilliant light and shadow. However, compared to before, there seemed to be a bit more vitality in this thunder, fire, and wood intent, as if it truly existed there. A trace of agility and naturalness that was not easily detected by ordinary people was emanating from it. Crack. In an instant, the third lightning tribulation followed closely. That was a somewhat erratic force of lightning. Unlike the previous solidity like a spear, the third lightning tribulation was not much different from ordinary lightning in appearance. The only difference was that it had been enlarged dozens of times. The thick lightning directly smashed Liang Yue in the air into the earth. The parasitic tree in the middle did not seem to play any mitigating role, and was directly turned into powder by this blow, scattering in large pieces. As for Liang Yue himself, at the moment when the lightning tribulation struck, he only felt a darkness in front of his eyes and lost consciousness. Even the originally powerful Tensigan had temporarily lost its instincts under the heavy blow, and then fell into a state of chaos and confusion. Fortunately, Liang Yue still had his divine sense, and after passing through a brief moment of, he gradually regained his clarity, replacing his vision and firmly covering everything around him. Chapter 403 Decisive Moment. That's it, only a measly 3 lightning tribulations, that's all. Is this looking down, on me? Looking at the dissipating tribulation clouds above, Liang Yue, who was lying in a pit over 10 meters deep and still occasionally twitching, felt a sense of surprise. His mouth opened slightly, and a wisp of green smoke mixed with a burnt smell floated out. Electric arcs crackled all over his body, and even with the lightning firewood innate intent fully activated, he couldn't control it for a while clearly. Although the number of lightning tribulations wasn't high this time, the final strike had once again exceeded Liang Yue's original estimate. However, the lightning power within the heavenly tribulation was a rare and precious thing, so naturally, it couldn't be wasted. Thus, Liang Yue couldn't care less at this moment and forcibly activated the remaining power of lightning firewood, compressing the scattered lightning tribulations into his body. As a result, in an instant, Liang Yue's dantian, meridians, flesh, skin, and bones were filled with crackling electric arcs. The remaining power of the lightning tribulation was truly shocking, with hints of crimson mixed in the deep blue color. Even with Liang Yue's self-proclaimed indestructible body, it was difficult to withstand, causing him to feel unbearably itchy and numb. Twitching incessantly, strands of burnt smoke continuously drifted out from his body. A full 5 or 6 minutes passed by the time Naruto, Sasuke, Hinata, and the others who had been anxiously waiting in the distance arrived and then left one after another due to the situation on the field. The power had gradually dissipated. He barely managed to control all the lightning tribulation power within his dantian. Looking at the lightning fire sapling within his dantian, which had formed its own system, The almost perfect and harmonious conversion system had now disappeared, and the balance between lightning and fire was broken. The dazzling electric arcs completely suppressed the flames, which were squeezed into the corners, suffering from exclusion. Lightning spread throughout the sapling. It seemed that if Liang Yue hadn't cultivated his lightning fire wood innate intent to a certain level, and if his danshan wasn't filled with wood attribute spiritual power cultivated through the evergreen skill, these lightning powers would have likely caused him great trouble. Even so, Liang Yue still needed to expend a great deal of energy to suppress these lightning tribulation powers, waiting for a later time to slowly refine and tame them. Therefore, the current situation was that Liang Yue was temporarily unable to use the spiritual power in his body to do anything else. How are you, Chunkyu? Are you alright? Seeing Liang Yue reopen his eyes, Hinata, who had been guarding him, immediately asked with a face full of concern. Yeah, not a big problem. Feeling the still uncontrollable itching sensation in his body, Liang Yue twitched his lips, gently exhaled a mouthful of turbid air, then sat up and smiled at Hinata. At this moment, compared to this pit, the situation outside seemed to have fallen into crisis again. Through the observation of his divine sense, Liang Yue discovered without the intimidation of the Ten Tails, Madara, who had been hiding on the sidelines, undoubtedly became the main target of the allied forces. In addition, Little Diamond had previously restrained him single-handedly, so the allied forces in the cage, thinking they had the advantage in numbers, believed they could quickly eliminate Madara under heavy pressure. As a result, Madara quickly gave the allied forces a solid lesson with his actions. At this time, Madara had gathered the bloodline power of the two descendants of the Sage of Six Paths through his own layout and methods. In his prime, even Hashirama was no match for him. A series of Susanoo fancy slashes instantly cleared a large number of miscellaneous soldiers, and two meteorites smashed down, scaring the allied forces out of their wits. In this situation, Obito, who had been hiding in the Kamui space, finally completed his goal and completely removed the seal engraved on his heart. Wearing two Rinnegan, he returned to everyone's presence. As a result, for a time, the massive ninja allied forces, plus the 5 Kage, plus the 4th Hokage, were only able to fight these two to a draw. Even Naruto, Sasuke, and the others who had been guarding Liang Yue were back on the field, engaging in a rotation battle with the two Uchiha. Currently, the battle situation is still in a stalemate. However, Liang Yue also knew that, according to the development of the plot, even without him, the allied forces would eventually win. There was no doubt about this. The opportunity for reversal lay only in when the Sage of Six Paths would come out from the shadows to pass on his power. Therefore, the problem Liang Yue should be thinking about now is still his own system mission. In short, the Ten Tails has been temporarily suppressed and shouldn't reappear in a short time. Soniji and the others should no longer be in danger of losing their lives. Black Zetsu has now been sealed by me in the Black Ball. In theory, Kaguya Otsutsuki should no longer have a chance to appear. Later, I only need to destroy a Black Zetsu to eliminate the hidden danger. So the current threats are only Madara and Obito, and also Aishiki's reincarnation body, and the subsequent Momoshiki, Kinshiki, and others. This isn't urgent for now. With Hinata's support, Liang Yue slowly stood up, clenched his fist, and slightly moved his still uncomfortable body. Then, he hugged the little girl next to him and jumped out of the pit in front of him. As far as the eye could see, most of the ninjas had already retreated from the battle zone. The first and second Hokage, plus Little Diamond, were currently fighting Madara together, and the battle was fierce, but the gap between them wasn't large, and it was temporarily impossible to determine a winner. Obito on the other side seemed more troublesome. After wearing a pair of Rinnegan, Obito's strength soared. Even with the 5 Kage, the 3rd and 4th Hokage, and a group of elite experts from the allied forces, it seemed a bit stretched. The key was that, after indirectly becoming a 6 Paths level powerhouse, Obito's current chakra had an almost dominant influence on the lower level energy within the system. In addition to being able to freely absorb ninjutsu and restore it to chakra, and his physical strength greatly increased. Even if he was hide off guard, ordinary ninjutsu wouldn't be able to cause him any harm. Fortunately, Obito was still unable to freely control the power brought by the Rinnegan. Under the interference of various discomforts, the allied forces' losses weren't too great. Moreover, since there were now several innate level experts in the Konoha system, that is, those who could use sage art, the allied forces seemed to have gradually mastered a way to deal with Obito. Chunkyu, you're here. Are you alright? Bringing Hinata to the team confronting Obito, the sharp-eyed second pillar almost immediately spotted the two. I'm fine, but I can't use too much chakra for now. Liang Yue didn't speak too definitively about the fact that the energy in his danshan couldn't be mobilized. After all, he had more than just spiritual power in his body. In his upper danshan, that is, the magic heart at his brow, there was a hidden sea of magic. Chapter 404 Strength Crushing. What was with those lightning strikes earlier? It seemed like they were all aimed at you, right? At this moment, Jiraiya, who was on high alert nearby, joined the conversation, looking at him with a slight tilt of his head, his hand still condensing a spirit arrow technique that was 2 sizes larger. The high-speed rotating conical ninjutsu was currently accumulating the surrounding air, faintly forming a whirlwind. The same technique also appeared on Tsunade and the third Hokage, among other strong members of the Leaf Village faction in front. The main force currently fighting against Six Paths Obito was Naruto and the fourth Hokage. This father and son duo were currently at full power, one on the left and one on the right, one yin and one yang, both entering 9 Tails chakra mode at the same time. These two seem to have also borrowed a Sage Art system from Mount Myaboku, activating Sage mode with a blessing of dual states. Their momentum was quite astonishing. Therefore, for a time, this father and son duo actually managed to fight Obito, who was not at his peak state, to a draw, even slightly gaining the upper hand. However, the situation in the field had always been in a state of anxiety, with both sides exchanging blows and refusing to give in. Obito, at the Six Paths level, was obviously superior in terms of chakra quality, coupled with the almost flawless defense ability of yin-yang release, making him seem to have a firm grasp of victory. On the other hand, Naruto and Yongdaime were more flexible in their fighting style and skills, coupled with the amplification of 9 Tails chakra and Sage Art in a 2-on-1 situation. The scene was even more impressive. However, in Liang Yue's view, all of this was just an illusion. The real situation was that both sides were still in the probing stage, or rather, Obito on the opposite side was adapting to his Six Paths level power while calming his own bad state. Naruto, the fourth Hokage, and the allied forces were more focused on probing the opponent's information and weaknesses. Once the real decisive moment arrived, with the second and fourth Hokage both possessing the Flying Thunder God technique, the outcome of the victory or defeat might only be a matter of a moment. Yes, those few lightning tribulations were indeed aimed at me. To be precise, that should be a kind of test from the heaven and earth for me. Liang Yu heard the words and did not choose to hide anything. In fact, if time allowed, he was also prepared to pass on the cultivation methods after the Xiantian realm anyway. In a few years, he would return to the real world. At that time, no matter how the Naruto world changed, it would have little to do with him. He just didn't know whether the same cultivation method would work between the two forces of spiritual power and chakra test. Why is this happening? Sasuke next to him was stunned when he heard the words, and then asked, "This is probably because I have already broken through to higher realm before," Liang Yu said as he slowly walked forward, coming to the side of Urzuzi, Jiraiya and others higher realm. Six Paths level, Itachi, who was on the side, also showed a look of surprise on his cold face when he heard the words on the other side. Jiraiya, Tsunade, the third Hokage, Orochimaru, and a few Kage from other ninja villages who could only be responsible for soy sauce, were all looking shocked, especially those ninjas from outside Konoha. Were even more erected their ears at this time, for fear of missing a trace of detail. After all, for these outsiders, the Xiantian realm, which is the immortal realm in their eyes, is still in the stage of only hearing its name, not to mention the Six Paths level information that was suddenly mentioned in front of them, which can only be sealed as a secret in the long-standing Uchiha and Senju clans. Six Paths level? That is to say, Yukid is now at the same level as Obito on the opposite side. Hearing his words, Jiraiya suddenly looked over with a look of surprise, and the spirit arrow technique that was originally ready to go in his palm was casually thrown to Obito, who was hiding behind the black ball shield. As a result, in addition to making a hole in the black ball, it was naturally fruitless. Yes, to be precise, I was promoted normally through cultivation, while Obito's words are the result of forcibly amplifying his power by relying on that pair of Sharingan. After speaking, Liang Yu stepped out and came to the side of Naruto and the fourth Hokage. "Does this mean that you are stronger than Obito now?" the third Hokage on the side said with a look of relief when he heard the words. "Almost. Because of the lightning tribulation, I can't mobilize much chakra for the time being, but whether it is the realm or the accumulation of energy, it is all my own." As for that guy Obito, his chakra comes from the other tailed beasts, and his realm is only based on the Sharingan, and his pair of Sharingan should still come from Madara, so his strength can only be barely regarded as Six Paths level. After speaking, Liang Yu looked at Obito, who had a wooden expression on the opposite side, and suddenly slammed his fists in front of his chest. In an instant, several orange semi-transparent light spheres appeared behind him, just quietly floating there. "I have to use it, otherwise it's the same as not having it." Swish! With a tap of his feet, Liang Yu's figure flashed away. The whole person was like a blurred black line. When he reappeared, he was already not far from Obito. The next moment, the golden sword light suddenly shone in the field, and instantly grew to the limit size of 20 meters. However, compared with the past, the sword light itself seemed to have undergone some changes under the blessing of Liang Yu's foundation establishment realm. In addition to being more solid, it seemed to have reached a physical state. Although the length was still 20 meters, the transformation in terms of width and shape had been significantly improved. In short, it is more free to control. If Liang Yu's previous sword light looked a bit like a flashlight in shape, then the sword light in his hand has completely become the appearance of a sword. Every arc, every curve, and every detail can be changed freely with his mind. Just like now, the sword light in Liang Yu's hand turned into an enlarged version of the sword of promised victory the moment it popped out. As soon as it appeared, it was held high above his head by him, facing Obito, who was shrinking in the black hemisphere. He gave a heavy slash. Swish. The expected fierce collision did not occur. Accompanied by the imperceptible sound of the wind, the sword light directly divided the black ball into two. The whole process was as smooth as silk. Obito's half arm was then separated from his body in a pair of Sharingan full of circles. The color of shock flashed away at this moment. Obito, who found that the situation was not right, immediately retreated quickly. In his understanding, the black ball seemed to be synonymous with absolute defense. Being broken so easily by a sword obviously exceeded his expectations. However, what surprised him was far more than that. The next moment, Obito was shocked to find again that he could not even match the opponent's speed. Wushai saw in the Sharingan's vision. Liang Yue at this moment seemed to have transformed into a ghost, with a long afterimage behind him, like a gangrene attached to the bone. He appeared on Obito's side throughout the whole process. Not only did there not appear a trace of separation between the two, but they had been getting closer. In an instant, I saw that the shining sword light was waved out again. The wide sword surface was like a heavy hammer, hitting on the few remaining black ball substances above Obito. Boom! The next moment, he was smashed into the earth with a ball and the person. Immediately afterwards, the orange Orioles chased down quickly like tracking missiles. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 405 Madara takes action. Careful, just at this moment, as Liang Yue was about to follow up on the tailed beast bomb to deliver a fatal blow to Obito, or at least seize the Rinnegan, a warning suddenly came from behind. Immediately following, from the distant second battlefield, Madara, who had been fighting the first, second Hokage, and Little King Kong, had now broken free. He had somehow shaken off the entanglement and aimed his attack at Liang Yue. Madara was now entirely enveloped within the massive Susanoo, his reanimated Rinnegan eyes fixed on him. The Ajna chakra seemed endless, pushing the surrounding air currents outwards in all directions. The katana at his waist was already 8/10 drawn, its long blade wreathed in a dazzling golden torrent. Sing! The next moment, accompanied by a brief and ear-piercing metallic clang, the Susanoo longsword slashed out instantly. The golden chakra blade energy was as swift as light and lightning. In an instant, it had crossed the spatial distance of over 1,000 meters, slashing diagonally at Liang Yue, who was floating in midair. Logically speaking, with Liang Yue's current reaction and movement speed, even if this attack came from Madara, he would still have the confidence to dodge it with ease. There was no need to worry about it at all. However, facing Madara's angry attack, while he himself could certainly dodge, his ninja teammates who were behind him might not be able to withstand it. At the very least, not everyone could withstand such a full-force attack enhanced by the three-stage Susanoo. In the original storyline, even the combined strength of the 5 Kage was still miserably beaten by Madara, wasn't it? Tsunade herself was even bisected at the waist, almost losing her life. The current Konoha ninjas, although stronger than in the original story due to Liang Yue's presence, Hinata and the others still couldn't cope with Madara's level of attack. Therefore, facing Madara's slash, he could only choose to withstand it head-on. However, Liang Yue's response was quite simple as Liang Yue swung his sword. A miniature golden sword light shot out instantly, meeting the seemingly invincible attack head-on. Catcha, accompanied by a shattering sound like metal clashing. The two disproportionate blades of light, large and small, actually annihilated each other in midair, scattering into countless fragments. After the violent gale subsided, it gradually returned to calm. This result was clearly somewhat beyond Madara's expectations. and also beyond the expectations of the allied shinobi forces behind him to cope with this attack. Naruto had already charged up a tailed beast ball, and Sasuke and Itachi had both activated their Susanoo. They clearly hadn't expected that Madara's thunderous blade of light would be so easily neutralized by Liang Yue. However, despite their surprise, Madara himself wouldn't stop there. After all, the Rinnegan on Obito's body belonged to him. After all, Madara hadn't had time to complete his resurrection plan. With Black Zetsu, the mastermind behind the scenes, captured, many of the original plans were now on the verge of bankruptcy, unable to proceed smoothly. In addition, there was Liang Yue, a variable that should have appeared now. If Liang Yue were to get the Rinnegan, Madara's ambitious plan for a world of peace would probably be completely aborted. Therefore, seeing that his Susanoo blade of light hadn't worked, Madara immediately and unhesitatingly slashed several more times at Liang Yue. Anyway, he now had a bug-like supply of infinite chakra. At the same time, while exchanging blows with Liang Yue from afar, Madara didn't forget to remind Obito, "What are you waiting for?" As for Obito, through the Tenseigans' vision, through the thick cloud of dust below, Liang Yue could clearly see Obito's miserable state. Except for being lucky enough not to be hit in the head, most of his body had been blasted into a fragmented mess by the previous tailed beast bomb, to the extent that, at this moment, the most complete part of Obito's body, besides his head, was actually the arm that Liang Yue had cut off earlier. However, what was unexpected was that, perhaps due to the pain, Obito, who had been overwhelmed by the spiritual power of multiple tailed beasts and unable to concentrate, had unexpectedly regained consciousness. Moreover, Obito had been implanted with Hashirama cells in the past due to his physical disability. In addition, coupled with the enhancement of the Rinnegan in his eye sockets, Obito, who hadn't died immediately, was now trying to reunite his body. Visible flesh sprouts, like an abstract octopus, were quickly connecting together under the pull of chakra. Thinking pretty highly of yourself. Seeing this, Liang Yue immediately curved his lips, a cruel smile appearing on his old face while coping with Madara's attacks, with a thought. Another iridium or short sword was immediately grasped in his left palm. The next moment, the second 20-meter-long victory sword popped out in the blink of an eye. It had pierced through Obito's forehead. However, to Liang Yue's surprise, Obito didn't die. This guy is a bit interesting. Speaking of which, where did he put this Kamui Mangekyo? Switching it out is so convenient. At this moment, in one of Obito's eye sockets, the original purple Rinnegan had quietly been switched to the Mangekyo. Under this bizarre special power, the brain-piercing sword that was originally a sure kill naturally became useless. However, the price was that Obito temporarily withdrew from the Six Paths level. Then, with a slight turn of his head, Obito had already moved his entire head out of the range of the blade. In the process, Obito's pair of different eyes glared fiercely at Liang Yue, the anger and killing intent within seeming to have completely abandoned restraint, as if in the next instant, he would pounce on him and fight to the death. But unfortunately, the only parts of Obito's body that could move freely at this moment were his head. After withdrawing from the Six Paths level, his own self-healing speed had also dropped a level, and under the Kamui state, his limbs couldn't complete the assembly between the tangible and intangible. In other words, if he wanted to piece together his fragmented body, he couldn't use Kamui. Therefore, Obito not only couldn't pose a threat to Liang Yue at this moment, but was also subject to his control. With a thought, the sword light that had originally stabbed at Obito suddenly changed shape. The wild victory sword instantly transformed into a giant broom, with thousands upon thousands of dense golden branches directly enveloping Obito's entire body. Unfortunately, Liang Yue ultimately underestimated the magical effect of the Kamui skill. As the familiar sewer spiral reappeared, Obito's entire head, along with the surrounding fragmented body, flowed into the Kamui space. Together in the blink of an eye, he disappeared without a trace. Chapter 406 The Power of the Samsara Eye. TCH. This ability is really a bit troublesome. Looking at the fragmented earth and stones remaining in the pit below, resembling a honeycomb briquette, Liang Yue couldn't help but purse his lips with a hint of helplessness while sighing inwardly. He could only temporarily place his hopes of resolving Obito on Kakashi, who was probably still within the Kamui dimension at this moment. Don't they all say Kakashi can go 50-50 with anyone? Now is the time to truly test that out. Go for it. I just don't know if Kakashi will actually be able to bring himself to do it. Facing his former classmate and close friend, if he misses this opportunity, he'll be facing a true Six Paths. Obito's thoughts raced through his mind. After splitting two more Susanoo blade lights, Liang Yue turned his gaze towards Madara in the distance, intending to go and deal with him first. However, just as he was about to move, his eyelids suddenly twitched, and a thought stirred in his heart. Speaking of which, After entering the sixth path level, don't most of the strong individuals with Otsutsuki bloodlines awaken one or two strange abilities, Kaguya Otsutsuki, Urashiki's Umatsu Hirasaka, Aishiki's Byakugan, space teleportation doors, Momoshika's time freeze, Sasuke's Amenadajikara, even Kinshiki, who was just an appendage and food, has the ability to become ethereal, freely entering various other dimensions, and even Kaguya's Umatsu Hirasaka world. These strange space-time powers seem to all originate from this clan's bloodline. Logically speaking, I shouldn't be too bad, right? Thinking this, Liang Yue subconsciously scratched his face while anticipating in his heart. He also began to eagerly check the bloodline inheritance information that had suddenly appeared in his mind. After advancing to the sixth path level, Chunkyu, are you alright? Seeing Liang Yue looking somewhat dazed and with an unusual expression, Naruto quickly rode Kurama to catch up and asked, I'm fine. But after advancing in realm earlier, a lot of strange knowledge suddenly appeared in my mind, which should be something from my bloodline. I remember that some of it seems to be about space-time ninjutsu abilities. If I can master them as soon as possible, a Brido shouldn't be able to escape. Feeling the concerned hearts and gazes around him, Liang Yue smiled and explained to everyone, is there such a good thing? Hearing this, Naruto's face was filled with surprise and blessings again. Is it from the Otsutsuki clan's bloodline? Hearing his words, Jiraiya's eyes lit up even more, his tone filled with deep envy. The others also had different expressions. The reason why Liang Yue couldn't do what Sasuke, Obito, or even Tonari did in the original storyline, where they could immediately apply those magical inherited skills to actual combat after awakening their Dojutsu and other bloodline abilities, was most likely due to the nature of the energy. After all, although Liang Yue now possesses the Otsutsuki bloodline, the energy he cultivates comes from the spiritual power of the cultivation lineage. Regarding this point, Liang Yue, who is situated between two systems, naturally has a deeper understanding. Chakra is undoubtedly a powerful force, with spiritual energy and energy being unusually closely combined in the original story. Through a person's chakra, one could even glimpse their past life's memories. Even more so, those sixth path level powerhouses could use chakra parasitism to complete reincarnation through others. From this, the nature of this energy can be seen. Spiritual power is different. Although the relationship between spiritual energy and the energy body can also be said to be close, it definitely doesn't reach the level of chakra under the cultivation framework. The two are mutually independent, complementing each other but with their own functions. Compared to chakra, it can only be said that each has its own strengths, and now, Liang Yue needs to use spiritual power to control the consumption of various ninjutsu, which will naturally create some differences, just like the multiple shadow clone technique he practiced before compared to Naruto's, which can fight independently, and even each shadow clone possessing an independent personality, occasionally even fighting each other. Liang Yue's shadow clones constructed with spiritual power are undoubtedly more rigid and require him to control them individually. However, this gap will also be smoothed out as his own realm improves and his spiritual power level increases. How is it, Chunkyu? Any gains? After a moment, when Liang Yue, who had been quietly comprehending, opened his eyes again, Sasuke and the others, who were guarding him, immediately looked over with anticipation and asked. The result is not bad. There's a lot of inherited information from the bloodline. For now, I have only learned a space-time ninjutsu called etherealization, which can be used to traverse various other dimensions. That's right, Liang Yue has now found the ability that belongs to him in those bloodline information. More precisely, it is his Dojutsu. Just like the Uchiha clan, each Sharingan that awakens the main Gekyo will produce a unique ability. In fact, this inheritance also exists in the Byakugan. It's just that compared to the Sharingan, the awakening of the Byakugan is later. Only when the Byakugan evolves into the Tenseigan will it truly manifest, and the ability of etherealization is exactly the same as the ability possessed by Kinshiki Otsutsuki in the original storyline. It can traverse various spaces, and can transfer oneself or surrounding objects back and forth between reality and other dimensions. This ability comes from Liang Yue's left eye. In the other Tenseigan right eye, a somewhat unexpected ability was born. Amino Iwado. According to Liang Yue's limited understanding of Japanese mythology, the prototype of Amino Iwado is actually a cave formed of rocks, isolated from the world. Amaterasu is the Japanese sun goddess. Once, after Amaterasu entered Amino Iwado, the outside world fell into darkness. Liang Yue's right eye's ability is somewhat similar to the Japanese legend, which is it can open a separate space made of a certain stone called Amino Iwado. In this respect, the ability of Amino Iwado is somewhat similar to Obito's Kamui dimension, but it's only similar. First of all, This ability is attached to his eyes. Liang Yue, who possesses the Amino-Iwado skill, can freely enter and exit it, and can also be used to seal and imprison some biological individuals. In addition, Amino-Iwado, as a world composed of special rocks, also has the passive characteristics of decomposing various non-living things. As well as preserving and planting. This ability seems a bit useless at first glance. After all, with a storage backpack in my world as a base, he doesn't lack a place to store and raise various creatures. In terms of confidentiality, Amino-Iwado has uniqueness. After Liang Yue awakened this ability, other Otsutsuki can no longer possess it unless Liang Yue dies one day, or leaves this world. Therefore, this Amino-Iwado is an independent space that belongs only to him personally. But the problem is that without Liang Yue's permission, his base world can also not be entered by others, and the functions of planting and preservation are needless to say. The reason why he treats this differently is because of the decomposition ability of Amino-Iwado. Chapter 407 Amino-Iwado. As the name suggests, the so-called decomposition is to return various objects, weapons, and other non-living things to their original material state. For example, within my world system, Liang Yue used a toolbox to create an iron sword. If you put it on the ground of Amino-Iwado, it will be slowly swallowed and dissolved, leaving only the hilt. The blade part will be reduced to a piece of high-purity iron material and automatically classified and poured together with other iron materials of the same material. The reason why the hilt cannot be decomposed is because its constituent material is wood in Amino-Iwado, under the condition that various kinds of vegetation crops can be planted, even after being felled. All parts of these plants will still be preserved. However, if the plants are reprocessed and synthesized into paper, they will be decomposed. Therefore, similarly, various substances such as quartz and sand will not be decomposed in Amino-Iwado because of their similar properties to rocks, but if they are made into glass by using sand for purification and conversion, they will not be spared because of this characteristic. Liang Yue also had many associations in his mind for a while. As time goes by, these equipment are almost bursting the warehouse. If these things are all filled into Amino-Iwado, as long as you wait patiently for a while, all kinds of iron materials, steel, rare metals, and even various magic gems, magic crystals, etc. Wouldn't they be available everywhere? Later, when Liang Yue starts to enter some fantasy, Xianxia worlds, if some of the artifacts, magic weapons, spiritual weapons, etc. inside are useless, or accidentally damaged. Gulu, thinking of this, Liang Yue couldn't help but swallow secretly, and a trace of longing flashed in his eyes. However, after noticing the attention of the people around him, this guy also subconsciously coughed lightly and quickly cleaned up the expression on his face. At the same time, he adjusted his mind and began to slowly inject the spiritual power in his body into his left eye. Afterwards, these spiritual powers were almost immediately transformed into a special pupil power with just a thought. The intangibility ability of the Tensigen was successfully used by him. The next moment, a strange perspective began to appear in Liang Yue's vision. At this moment, Liang Yue keenly noticed that his left eye seemed to be emitting an imperceptible rhythm. Although that change was small, the impact it brought was truly shocking. It almost made Liang Yue immediately resonate with the spatial barrier of the world in front of him. Immediately afterwards, Liang Yue's sight began to transcend the limitations of the surrounding space, and then easily peeked into the deeper structure and walls of overlapping walls, perhaps because the space coordinates of Obito's Kamui space were relatively close to where he was at the moment. Liang Yue had locked the opponent's location in just half a breath. I saw that at this time, the injuries on Obito's body had almost healed, and Kakashi was only left with the power to parry under his violent beating. It seems that Kaka-sensei ultimately couldn't bring himself to do it. With the blessing of a Rinnegan and a Kamui kaleidoscope, Kakashi's so-called 50-50 reputation has begun to become somewhat unworthy of the name. However, this is also understandable. After all, according to the plot, the current Kakashi has actually fought Obito for the second time before. At the cost of his life and the cost of having his shoulder pierced, Kaka-sensei had already pierced the opponent's heart with a Chidori. Although he was used, the injuries on his body were real. Moreover, Kakashi does not have Obito's perverted recovery ability. At the end of his strength, he has indeed reached the end of the road. Seeing that his substitute teacher was about to fall into a critical situation, so Liang Yue couldn't dare to delay any longer. At this time, I have found Obito's trace. I will go and come back. You guys concentrate on dealing with Madara first. Looking around, after explaining this to everyone, the next moment, Liang Yue's entire figure began to become dim in the blink of an eye. It had turned into a human-shaped ripple and disappeared without a trace. So convenient? I don't know if others can learn this kind of space-time ninjutsu. Jiraiya at this time looked at the air in front of him that quickly returned to its original state, and suddenly twitched his mouth, looking like he was amazed afterwards. This old guy turned his gaze to Tsunade on the side and continued, speaking of which, doesn't your Senju family also have the bloodline of the Otsutsuki clan? It shouldn't be worse than the Hyuga and Uchiha families. I don't know if you will be able to develop similar abilities in the future. Tsunade frowned immediately when she heard the words, glared at Jiraiya, and then turned her eyes to the distant battlefield, saying, stop talking nonsense. Now is not the time to relax. The threat posed by Madara under the reanimation jutsu will not be less than Obito. We need to make a layout in advance. That's right, the current Madara almost has the ability comparable to an immortal body. It is difficult for two direct offensives to pose a threat to him. Probably only sealing techniques can be used. The Stone Shadow, who had been doing nothing on the side, flew over with levitation at this time, saying with one hand behind his back afterwards, the Raikage, Kazekage, Mizukage and others in the rear also jumped onto the back of the Nine Tails one after another and began to offer suggestions for dealing with the enemy in a trance. Liang Yue quickly passed through the heavy spatial barriers and came to the Kamui space. The whole process seemed natural and exceptionally smooth. Then, the moment he appeared, Liang Yue aimed the iridium or short sword in his hand at Obito not far away with a thought. The golden sword light popped out instantly, unexpectedly. The wide sword light directly cut off Obito's right shoulder. Faced with the sudden appearance of Liang Yue, Obito was extremely shocked at this moment. He had absolutely never thought that there would be people other than himself and Kakashi in his Kamui space. As a result, when he was fighting Kakashi ecstatically, and was about to kill his old classmate, he had completely forgotten to guard against threats from third parties. Damn it! How did you appear here? Obito, who had suffered heavy damage, suddenly became extremely alert. After covering his wound and jumping back 20 or 30 meters, he turned his gaze fiercely at Liang Yue and asked with gritted teeth, the specific situation is probably similar to when your Sharingan awakened the Kamui ability. After becoming a 6th level, my Tenseigan also gained some abilities. Speaking, Liang Yue came to Kakashi's side unhurriedly, facing Kaka-sensei, who had relaxed his body because of his arrival and collapsed to the ground. He successively released 3 Taoist career skills from the legendary system, healing technique under the layers of sweet rain that emitted colorful brilliance. Kakashi, who was originally scarred and covered in blood, was immediately pulled back from the brink of danger. Although the wounds on his body have not completely healed, his state has returned from the previous serious injury to the stage of minor injury. Chapter 408 Samsara I. Liang Yue had always been curious, for example, abilities like Kamui, at the big level. What kind of existence and operating principle did it possess? What kind of sacred beings were the Otsutsuki clan, and where were they born from? What was the source of this clan's bloodline power, and why was it so strong? Until recently, as Liang Yue himself advanced to the 6th level, and also because of the official opening of the Tenseigan, awakening 2 magical abilities, he finally stopped dwelling on these questions, not because the further release of bloodline power allowed him to find the answers to these questions, but because Liang Yue's heart finally found its balance in the original storyline. The setting of the Kamui ability was quite insidious, so much so that Obito, after opening the main Gekyo Sharingan, instantly leaped from the strength of a Chunin to the existence of a high-end cage level. Once it appeared in the world, the entire Kamui space was completely integrated with Obito. Besides being able to enter at any time, anywhere, to avoid strong enemies and perform spatial displacement, he could also temporarily place a part of his body into the Kamui space during combat. This was to avoid damage from the enemy's ninjutsu, taijutsu, weapons, and other means. Moreover, according to Liang Yue's analysis, this entire process should be passive, without requiring extra effort to operate. Obito himself only needed to manage whether to activate this state or not. Otherwise, with Obito's brain power, he probably couldn't handle too much detailed control. However, regardless of whether his Kamui was passive or active, from the moment Liang Yue entered this space, this ability was rendered useless by 90%. It would no longer become an obstacle to Liang Yue's victory. Obito himself obviously understood this, so in the instant he jumped back, he took out another Rinnegan and replaced his Kamui main Gekyo with it. It's just a pity that even if he forcibly pushed himself to the 6th level, Obito was only on par with Liang Yue now. In addition, this pair of Rinnegan came from Madara and were not Obito's original equipment, so his own foundation was unstable, and he couldn't use many of the unique abilities exclusive to the Rinnegan. At the very least, the Limbo Border Jail that Madara used in the original storyline was something he couldn't use. Furthermore, The Ten Tails was already greatly injured at this time and had disappeared, so Obito naturally couldn't become the Ten Tails Jinchuriki. Therefore, facing such a fake Sixth Paths level powerhouse, Liang Yue didn't plan to use any tactics or strategies. He directly held dual swords, opened a 20-meter sword aura, and directly confronted him head-on. So, the situation that followed was probably like this. Obito wielded a weapon transformed from yin-yang, released black orbs to fight him, but the strength of this weapon depended on the strength of the practitioner's mental will. In the original storyline, Obito, who could be persuaded to doubt himself and have an emotional breakdown with a few words, and then change his ways, naturally only had the fate of being crushed when facing a genuine Sixth Paths level person. After only a few clashes, the DNA helix fork in his hand was chopped to pieces. Afterward, Obito still wanted to use the red flames behind him to restrain Liang Yue, but he was instantly cut in half on the spot immediately afterward. The sword aura in Liang Yue's other hand instantly transformed into a blood droplet, directly taking off the opponent's head. Is there anything else you want to say? After taking out a pair of Rinnegan from Obito's eye sockets, Liang Yue walked to the side, leaving the space for him and Kakashi. His old classmate. He himself frowned slightly, looking at the pair of eyes in his hand, secretly pondering the disposal plan for this thing for non-Uchiha clan members. This pair of eyes is a shackle. It will continuously wear down other people's potential, and even a genius like Kakashi will be dimmed because of it. For the ninja world, it is even more of a source of chaos. The best way is to destroy it immediately. That scene, just thinking about it, is disgusting, so much so that Liang Yue didn't plan to let other people in the Stronghold world take it for installation. Therefore, whether this pair of Rinnegan will eventually exist or not, he himself has no worries at all. However, after a few more years, Liang Yue will leave the ninja world. According to the system task indicators, before leaving, he will try his best to eliminate the war culprits of the current Naruto world. At that time, this pair of Rinnegan is actually a good bait. Maybe it can stir up some people's peeping in actions. After a moment, Obito finally swallowed his last breath, ending his life of sin and conspiracy to destroy the world for a woman. Liang Yue couldn't feel a trace of sympathy for the death of this kind of person. As for what he and Kakashi said before his death, Liang Yue didn't care either. However, at the last moment of his life, this guy was able to give Kakashi another Kamui Gekyo. This move can be considered a bit of conscience. This is probably because he was already disheartened. Moreover, if Obito didn't hand over this Sharingan, Liang Yue had every reason to believe that the other party would play the Eyes Energy resurrection trick with him again. I just hope that Kakashi doesn't have a brain fart and put on this second eye too. After Kakashi carefully collected Obito's bones, Liang Yue came to his side and once again used his intangible ability to bring the two back to the ninja world together in a trance. After a change of light and shadow, they returned to the battlefield again. Looking up, the battle between the allied forces and Madara had almost reached its end. Madara, who had not yet been resurrected by the reanimation jutsu, was indeed more resistant to beating than when he was a human, but after all, he was only one person, and he was ultimately outnumbered. A pair of Rinnegan had already fallen into Liang Yue's hands. At this time it can be said that if there were no accidents large enough to affect the battle situation, Madara's defeat was already without suspense. Therefore, Liang Yue was not in a hurry to take action in the following time. But under the siege of the 5 Hokage of Konoha, Little King Kong, plus Jiraiya, Orochimaru, Naruto, Sasuke, Itachi, and the 4 Kage of the other ninja villages, he ultimately did not escape the fate of defeat in the end. Although Madara in the reanimation state still had energy to spare, it was already to no avail. As if giving up, after exchanging a few big moves with the crowd, he sighed softly, only exchanged a few words with Hashirama, and then actively released the reanimation jutsu, and his soul returned to the Pure Land. Chapter 409 Return. Whoosh! With a flash of light, and a transformation of light and shadow, Liang Yue's figure finally returned to the base world after a long absence, leaving aside the little King Kong on his shoulder. Also returning with him was Hinata. It was still that familiar yet somewhat unfamiliar little village, and the top floor of the village's library tower that he hadn't seen for many years. Some unintentional patterns, carvings, and details decorated a place even more elegantly, but what remained unchanged was that the small village was still as warm as ever. The moonlight in the distant sky seemed a little dim, and a strange galaxy was hidden in the dark background. Ancient lamps lit up the rooftop space, and under the illumination of the orange light, the 3 girls opposite him were smiling as they walked towards him with expectant looks on their faces. I'm back. Looking at their graceful figures approaching, Liang Yue's heart, which had been tempered to be somewhat cold in the battles of the ninja world over the years, suddenly began to warm and melt. The burden that had been on his shoulders was also lifted in an instant. Pulling Hinata beside him, Liang Yue went straight to meet them, opening his arms and giving everyone a hard hug. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At this moment, beams of light began to flicker around the group. Liang Yue didn't need to look to know that it was Siko and Shizuka, who couldn't bear the time and had gone to the real world. So the hugs continued. Perhaps because they really hadn't seen each other for many years, the women seemed particularly enthusiastic at this time. For a time, someone could be said to have fallen into a soft and sweet ocean. A moment later, everyone sat down at the dining table, and Liang Yue introduced Hinata to them. In fact, in the years after the end of the Fourth Ninja World War, this little girl had already been successfully contracted by Liang Yue. The cause was naturally Black Zetsu. In order to eliminate that pseudo-spiritual aggregate and complete the system's main quest as soon as possible, Liang Yue took Hinata to the isolated Amino Iwata. The whole process was exceptionally smooth. After the seal was lifted, Black Zetsu took advantage of his inattention and possessed Hinata. After that, everything began to become natural. Using the power of the system, Liang Yue completed the contract with Hinata, and Black Zetsu was also dissolved into slag along the way. Therefore, in the following years, Hinata often used the convenience of the system rules to visit, explore, and travel in the base world. Occasionally, she would go on dungeons with Alwyn and the other two. After several exchanges, they had already become familiar with each other. However, Saya Takagi and Yuriko, Rikaminami, Zio Zhao, and Yang Yuhu, because they left early, were not able to meet each other. However, they had all heard of each other for a long time. In the first few years when Liang Yue first descended into the ninja world, this little girl Hinata had been growing up under the attention of the women. In addition, after a few glasses of wine at the banquet, they soon began to become familiar with each other. 15 years was enough for many things to change. For example, Hinata, who grew up with Liang Yue, had now matured and was no less beautiful than she was in the later anime plot. It is worth mentioning that Liang Yue and Hinata had already come together smoothly under the auspices of Hayashi Hyuga a few years ago. Unfortunately, perhaps because of some unknown reason, the two of them were unable to have any children. Similarly, Dilanana had also grown from a little girl of only 8 or 9 years old into a mature woman full of exotic customs. Inadvertently, there seemed to be some different affection in her eyes when she looked at Liang Yue. System, I want to submit the mission. While the women at the banquet were busy drinking, chatting, and eating melon seeds, Liang Yue was holding a wine glass in one hand and gently stroking the little King Kong in his arms with the other, silently chanting in his hearting. After testing, in this Heaven's Training main mission, hunt down the culprit, the host completed the mission with excellent data. In response, the system's reward is that the points reward is multiplied by 5, an additional lottery privilege, and in this lottery privilege the host can independently add a keyword to limit the scope of the lottery reading. After testing, in this Heaven's Training side mission, Protect Konoha, the host achieved the mission goal. In response, the system's reward is points reward 5,000, additional lottery privilege 1 sting. After testing, in this Heaven's Training side mission, Byakugan Evolution, the host overcompleted the mission goal. In response, the system's reward is points reward multiplied by 2, a random eye skill or technique ding. Due to some special reasons, all rewards obtained by the host in this Heaven's Training are multiplied by 2, and an additional skill fusion privilege is obtained ding. After calculation, in this Heaven's Training, the total number of points obtained by the host is 72,000, 2 limited lottery privileges, 2 ordinary lottery privileges, 2 eye skills or techniques, and 1 skill fusion privilege. Regarding the rewards for this system mission, Liang Yue had actually performed multiple calculations back in the Naruto world. The current gains can only be regarded as roughly the same as his expectations. Among them, the reason why Liang Yue was able to achieve a 5-fold point bonus in the main mission was naturally because he had been working hard for the peace of the ninja world in the following years, from Black Zetsu, Obito, Madara's Rinnegan, to the Otsutsuki family who later descended into the ninja world. Except for Kaguya, who had been in a sealed state due to Black Zetsu's early departure, all the unstable factors that could cause trouble and wars in the ninja world had been suppressed by him. Therefore, while feeling gratified to receive the system's large multiplier bonus, Liang Yue also felt that it was a matter of course. As for the side mission of protecting Konoha, there was nothing to say. The standard mission difficulty was high, but the rewards were slightly uneconomical. But even a mosquito's leg is still meat. The reward of 5,000 basic points was actually enough for him to do many things. Finally, in the side mission of Byakugan Evolution, Liang Yue actually had the opportunity to further expand this reward. First of all, The reason why he was able to get the system's double points bonus was because he had obtained the amplification of the Eye of Truth skill on the basis of advancing to the Tensigen. That's right, the Eye of Truth brought by the Wind Phantom Dragon template was also included in the system's calculations, although this was likely just an accident, and the growth template itself was also a gift from the system, although, because the effects were almost overlapping. Liang Yue's Tensigen hardly showed too many changes under the amplification of the Eye of Truth, but who told him he was lucky? The reason why Liang Yue had the opportunity to expand the reward of this mission stemmed from those Otsutsuki clan members devouring the power of companions can strengthen one's own pupil power and the number of eyes to a certain extent, just like Momoshiki swallowing Kinshiki in the original plot. As long as Liang Yue could bring himself to do it, he could easily mutate his pair of Tensigen, and even grow a few more eyes on certain parts of his body, but the problem was that this method of mutation was really disgusting in Liang Yue's eyes. Chapter 410 System Lottery. Alvin, Siko, Shizuka, Saya, Yuriko, Minami Rika, Zaya Ozeo, Bue, Hinata, Nana, and Rachel have all been used. Mom doesn't count, so that's 9 people. This time, the points earned from the Naruto world totaled 72,000, plus the 28,000 remaining from before, making it 100,000. Then, the Wind Phantom Dragon template costs 31,000 per card, and each card can be used 3 times. I need to buy 3 cards, so the surplus is 10,000. Oh, right, I also need to buy a Christmas gift pack for Hinata, so, in the end, there will be 5,000 points left. Alright then, after reaping the rewards of this mission, Liang Yue didn't rush to the lottery as usual. Instead, he sipped his beer and silently calculated his upcoming expenses. After all, it was a promise I made before, so I really can't skimp on it. Thinking of this, Liang Yue didn't dwell on it any longer. With a thought, he opened the system shop and took down 3 small cards. Afterward, he bought a large gift pack from another shelf. The eye accessory in that gift pack's outfit was perfect for covering up in it as original pupil color, although buying a pair of colored contact lenses from the street could also solve the problem. As his woman, putting aside some risks, Liang Yue wouldn't allow himself to treat Hinata differently. In reality, his own Tensigen were also very conspicuous once exposed. Those crystal-colored eyes would be even more eye-catching than the Byakugan. Fortunately, he already had 2 sets of outfits in his equipment bar, so he didn't need to worry about that here. These are the templates I promised you. At the dinner table, Liang Yue, with a heartache he couldn't express, pretended to be generous and threw the 3 cards onto the table. He also handed the other gift pack to Hinata, who is not far away. Wow. We thought you had already forgotten. How could I? I always keep it in mind. Saya-chan and the others, who had been looking forward to this for a long time, immediately snatched them up with shining eyes. Then, including Hinata, one by one, they couldn't wait to run into the small wooden house not far away, leaving only Nana and Rachel at the table. Seeing this, Liang Yue beckoned the 2 girls to his side, and then prepared to start this lottery event system. I want to draw a lottery, starting with those 2 ordinary ones. With a thought, the familiar roulette wheel appeared in front of the 3 of them. The originally lazy little King Kong also perked up a lot at this time, reached out a paw to take a plate of roasted crispy bones from the table, squatted on the back of the sofa and ate it crunchingly, his monkey eyes staring at the top without blinking. Although, this time the lottery opportunity cannot add any restrictive words, the randomness is relatively large, but in view of the 15 years of experience in the Naruto world, Liang Yue's current realm and strength have been qualitatively improved compared to the past, so the quality of the prizes placed on the roulette is undoubtedly more superb. Liang Yue only glanced at it and found many rare or coveted items on it, not to mention the 2 girls beside him. Their eyes were full of splendor, and they couldn't help but mutter to themselves, greatsword, Bagua compass, bronze cauldron, white pagoda. They don't look simple. There's even a pair of transparent wings, but the shape is a bit like a dragonfly's, too fragile. Not suitable for me. Nana, do you think that round bead has a pill? It even has a halo around it. It shouldn't be. If it were a pill, it would be placed in a bottle. I think that should be a treasure bead. That's not a treasure bead, but a mass of essence condensed from earth attribute energy. It's very pure and heavy, almost materialized. It seems to be a bit more solid than the small tree in my danchin. However, it's useless to say more. Let's start the lottery. As soon as Liang Yue's voice fell, the roulette wheel in front of him began to spin rapidly. Although he now has the Tensigen, which excels at observation and detection, plus the Eye of Truth assisting him, to be honest, Liang Yue still doesn't think he has the slightest possibility of peeking into the mysteries of the lottery roulette. So, after the roulette wheel in front of him ran for a few seconds, Liang Yue went to the next step on his own. Stop, The moment the order was issued, the roulette wheel in front of him immediately stopped spinning, leaving only the central pointer still operating forward with inertia as time slowly passed. The pointer in front of him also began to slow down, until it finally stopped completely. It's actually a bag? Could it be a magical treasure? Looking at the place where the tip of the pointer was pointing, Liang Yue's heart skipped a beat at this moment. Congratulations to the host for obtaining a primary spirit herb bag in this lottery. After opening it, the host can randomly obtain 10 kinds of spiritual plants. There are no restrictions on the types of fruits, herbs, and crops. The spiritual plant level is randomly generated between 1 and 3 grades. The higher the level of spiritual plants, the lower the probability of occurrence. It turns out it's just a random bag filled with spirit herbs. I thought it was a magical treasure like a Kayankan bag. Liang Yue looked at the palm-sized small bag in his hand with some disappointment at this time. Just as he was about to throw it on the table casually, his heart suddenly moved, and then he thought again, but it's okay, at least they are all spirit level herbs, which is a small improvement compared to before. Although the level won't be too high, the system store will definitely put it on the shelves with accumulation. I should be able to open up a lot of bizarre crops. I just don't know if the current aura level of the stronghold world can keep them alive. After handing the bag in his hand to Nana, who was beside him, the little girl Rachel couldn't wait to come over and reach out to untie it. Seeing this, Liang Yue no longer paid attention to them, secretly glanced at the current system store, confirmed that this thing had been put on the shelves, and then entered the second lottery start-stop link. Congratulations to the host for obtaining a power plant. This building comes from the Forager world. After system improvement, it can be operated by thermal power, water flow, tide, or burning redstone, can achieve wireless charging within a certain range, and can speed up the operation efficiency of various buildings and facilities. Power plant? This thing is really a bit of a surprise. As an indispensable energy facility in modern life, the role of power plants is naturally unquestionable. However, this thing is not rare. Liang Yue can buy it from the outside world with a little money. Whether it can be wirelessly charged is not important. After all, after realizing the freedom of entry and exit of the stronghold world, electricity is no longer a necessity for the current stronghold world. However, as an item from the game world, its role in speeding up the operation speed of various building facilities is not entirely useless. Although, there are no facilities in the current stronghold world that need to use it to accelerate. Should I put it outside? Chapter 411 Dragon Slash. Brother. The spiritual herbs have bloomed, and it seems the harvest is pretty good. Among the first-grade spiritual plants, there are 8 Gather Cloud spirit herbs, 3 crescent fruit saplings, 3 black-yellow essence seedlings, 6 moonshadow grasses, and 2 ink pear saplings. For second-grade spiritual herbs, there are 3 white jade ginseng seedlings, 1 blood jade grapevine, 3 vermilion fruit seedlings, and 5 dark ice grasses. There's only one type of third-grade spiritual item, called rain mist spirit tea. Among these 10 spiritual plants, crescent fruit and ink pear can be eaten as daily fruits. They are said to taste excellent and provide users with a large amount of vital energy. Although blood jade grapes and vermilion fruits are also spiritual fruits, the grapes are suitable for winemaking, and vermilion fruits have high medicinal value and can increase in potency year by year. Neither should be wasted easily. Among the medicinal herbs are yellow essence, white jade ginseng, moonshadow grass, and dark ice grass, of which, the third-grade rain mist spirit tea is suitable for planting in rainy areas. Regular consumption is said to enhance one's soul and mental strength. Finally, there's the Gather Cloud spirit herb. Although this herb is only a first-grade spiritual plant, its function is quite special. It can actually absorb the essence of the sun and moon to emit spiritual energy. It can also gather wind and clouds and induce rainfall, but its need for soil nutrients is very low. I feel like it can be planted in more barren areas. Just as Liang Yue was sitting on the sofa pondering the location of the power plant, Nana and Rachel, who were opening lucky bags beside him, couldn't wait to place the spiritual plants they had obtained in front of him. Then, one by one, they reported to him as if listing family treasures. Their big eyes seemed to glow, showing enthusiasm and radiance so amazing. Then we have to find a good spot and take good care of them. Liang Yue heard this and immediately looked over with great interest, touching this and poking that. In the end, he and the 2 girls had the same goal, focusing their observation on the Gather Cloud spirit herb. Looking at the palm-sized herb in front of him, with sprouts already growing on the fruit, he leaned close to the heads of the 2 girls beside him and looked at the planting manual they were holding for a moment. Liang Yue couldn't help but fall into deep thought, able to absorb the essence of the sun and moon and emit spiritual energy. It seems like we need to plant more of this stuff. Crack. Just then, the sound of a door opening suddenly came from the small wooden house not far away. Liang Yue looked up and then saw a group of Kana-chans emerging from the house one after another. They were holding hands with each other, and their expressions all carried a hint of mischief. Guess who I am? Instantly, the cute lolly voices multiplied by 9, only to see her standing there with a shy expression, her face flushed, her head slightly lowered, and her hands pinching the hem of her clothes, with a hint of embarrassment in her eyes. Clearly, Hinata still wasn't quite used to her outfit after opening the Christmas gift bag. He didn't expect this girl to actually draw Chinese cheongsam, and a rather tight-fitting one at that, only to see elegant peony flowers embroidered with the gold thread on the black, luxurious fabric. Delicate yet without being ostentatious, the half-length sleeves and hem were lined with the black silk fabric, and she was also wearing a pair of black cloth high heels, showing elegance and charm in every movement. In addition, Hinata was also wearing a pair of buns covered in black gauze on her head. Of course, most importantly, Hinata's pair of pale purple pupils had disappeared, replaced by a pair of dark and bright, watery eyes. So beautiful. Liang Yue casually pulled the girl into his arms, then couldn't help but say in her ear after playing around for a while. The girls beside him sat down again, but their attention was now drawn to the lucky draw spinning wheel in front of someone. Limited draw start. The limited range I want to add is cultivation techniques. The reason for choosing the cultivation technique category is self-evident. At this time, Liang Yue had successfully advanced to the foundation establishment stage. Moreover, during the remaining training time in the Naruto world, he had completely consolidated his cultivation. The evergreen art had been practiced to its limit, but the complex Otsutsuki bloodline had given him even more possibilities as for how to proceed on the road ahead. Liang Yue was still unsure. In short, there were too many paths ahead, and he was already a little dazzled. Stop, Ling. Congratulations to the host for obtaining a fire-type secret technique, Spirit Flame Art, in this draw. This secret technique allows practitioners to enhance the power of the spirit flame within their bodies. Additionally, it can refine a flame existing in the world, integrating it into the spirit flame, further increasing the potential of the spirit flame. Yo, this thing is not bad, enhancing the power of the spirit flame in the body, just right to make up for the imbalance of thunder, fire, and wood. But that wild flame is not easy to find. Looking at the not-too-thick secret manual in his hand, Liang Yue couldn't help but feel happy at this time. Although in the remaining years in the Naruto world, he had completely integrated the power of the heavenly tribulation into the thunder, fire small tree in his body through continuous refinement and wear, without needing to suppress it with spiritual power. However, the power of the thunder and fire attributes in the small tree had not been able to form the previous balanced situation again. This technique can be regarded as solving his urgent need. Also, this secret technique is not only for me. As long as your realm reaches it, you can all practice it. Saying that, Liang Yue handed the secret manual to Nana beside him. After thinking about it, he continued, however, I'm still a bit unclear about the things in the magic system. I should find some time to ask my mom about it. After finishing, Liang Yue ignored the girls beside him who had gathered together again. With a thought, the lucky draw spinning wheel appeared again. Stop, Ling. Congratulations to the host for obtaining a scroll recording the Black Magic Dragon Slave, in this draw. This item comes from the Slayer's world. This magic is extremely powerful, and it is said to have killed an adult dragon with one blow. After being improved by the system, casting this magic no longer requires the power of a high-ranking demon. The consumption is borne by the caster themselves. The more magic power injected during casting, the stronger the power. Good stuff. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 412, Eye of Holy Light. Dragon Break / Chapter 413, Fusion of Skills. Speaking of which, the guy who developed this cultivation method must have been a blockhead, right? Such a unique way of thinking is truly elusive. Also, when this cultivation method was first created, the person's realm shouldn't have been too high. Otherwise, there would be no need to deliberately clear the meridians in the eyes. Once a certain stage is reached, these techniques and methods will naturally become interconnected and easily understood. That state of randomly giving birth to some kind of divine power is the most precious. Speaking of which, this person's luck is truly enviable. They were able to create such an effective secret technique by accident. If it were me, could I also? Thinking of this, Liang Yue couldn't help but sink into deep thought again. He didn't even notice Yang Yue quietly approaching and taking the I-Meridian scripture from his side afterward. Liang Yue just sat quietly on the sofa, drinking his wine while gazing absently at the moon in the sky, seemingly lost in thought. He was actually constantly contemplating the possibility of creating his own cultivation method for a time. The thoughts in Liang Yue's mind were like colliding bolts of lightning, crackling and popping, never ceasing after a long while, until the crescent moon in the sky began to slowly fall behind the treetops and was obscured by a thick rain cloud. He finally came back to his senses at this time. The women at the wine table had long since disappeared, and had all returned to the small wooden house across the way, their discussion still echoing. Listening carefully for a while, it seemed they were still exchanging and discussing cultivation ideas on the warm rooftop. Only little Kong was lying on his back, feigning sleep disc. Why am I thinking so much? I haven't even settled on the energy in my dancing yet. After experiencing an intense mental storm, at a certain moment, Liang Yue suddenly remembered something, which was he didn't seem to have used the skill fusion privilege yet. According to the system, this was a fusion method that could combine the two energies in his body into one, to compensate for the fact that his body inexplicably shrank and his training time was extended in the previous Naruto world with the skill fusion privilege. Liang Yue's original regret of not being able to enter the path of cultivation after practicing martial arts techniques such as the Zixa True Scripture and Xianchen Guang could be smoothed over, and now the situation is that after 15 years of training in the Naruto world, Liang Yue has cultivated the Chongqing Gong to its limit and successfully advanced to the foundation establishment realm. In terms of the thickness of his cultivation in spiritual power is a whole realm higher than his martial arts true ki. In this case, I don't know what the energy in my dancing will become after the fusion. In fact, the moment Liang Yue returned from the Naruto world, the seal that was originally imprisoning the Xianchen Zixa True Ki had already disappeared. If the two completely different energies in the dancing were to meet, according to Liang Yue's previous situation, they would inevitably fight to the death. Fortunately, he reacted quickly enough, and he had already made various considerations before returning, and timely isolated the two energies. Otherwise, Liang Yue's dancing would have staged a fiery scene of thunder meeting fire. It's getting late. Let's take advantage of the fact that no one is disturbing me now and use this privilege. He stood up abruptly, stroked little Kong's head a few times, and after instructing this little guy to help protect him, Liang Yue came to the edge of the Tibetan scripture tower's rooftop and sat cross-legged on the stone platform in a proper manner. System, I want to use the skill fusion privilege to fuse the martial arts true ki and the cultivation spiritual power in my dancing. Ling. Command confirmed. Please let go of your mind. Host. Hearing this, Liang Yue immediately withdrew the thoughts he had originally used to restrain the two forces in his dancing. Immediately afterward, his body also relaxed, and he just watched from the sidelines as the energies, like two mad dogs, collided with each other and tossed about on their own. At this moment, the bright purple Xianchen Zixa True Ki and the cyan green wood attribute spiritual power intertwined in an instant. One was overwhelming and unstoppable, while the other was like an old tree with intertwined roots, accumulating strength and bursting forth, extending with vitality and potential that could not be ignored. Ding. Fusion begins. Fusion complete. Huh? Hey, that's it. Hearing this, Liang Yue's originally straight back suddenly slumped, and he wore a look of disbelief with the corners of his mouth twitching. In less than 2 or 3 seconds, the energies and colors in the dancing, which were originally completely different in nature, were fused together in an instant. The energy after this fusion presented a glowing purple color. Although it was also purple, it was different from the previous Xianchen Zixa True Ki. Eagerly opening his palm, with a thought, a ball of purple glow suddenly surged out from his palm under the illumination of the surrounding lights. This purple energy seemed to faintly reveal a golden light. Looking at this brand new energy, Liang Yue's eyes flickered at this moment. After carefully experiencing it, he suddenly discovered that this energy was really like piecing together the previous Xianchen Zixa True Ki and the foundation establishment stage wood spiritual power. It had both the toughness and explosive power of martial arts true ki, and the vitality and vigor of wood spiritual power. It was as if Liang Yue had just done the simplest math problem. 1 + 1 is still equal to 1. It's just that the current one is in existence that is superimposed on the previous 2. This could thus be the true meaning of skill fusion system. Ling. The so-called skill fusion is a method of combining two energies into one. The newborn energy at this time is a fusion of martial arts true ki and cultivation spiritual power. The superposition of energy properties is only its appearance, and its essence is a completely new energy body. Then what about my future cultivation? Should I practice martial arts techniques, or cultivating? Both are possible. The host can completely regard a new energy as a combination spanning two systems. In the myriad worlds, such cross-system energies are not uncommon. That's right, it's like the stellar transformation world. From a Haoshan martial artist to Xianshan, and then one step further directly to the golden core stage, there is no distinction between martial arts and immortal arts in the middle. There is only a difference in realm and edition. The cultivation systems of worlds like Journey to the West and the Primordial Era don't even have external changes after the formation of the golden core. In the subsequent realms, people can still continue to become stronger. My current situation doesn't require me to be entangled in what golden core, nascent soul, or other martial arts realms are. As long as I can become stronger, both cultivation systems can be used for reference. Chapter 414 Xian Wu Lineage. Liang Yue Identity, Immortal Martial Dao Cultivator, Foundation Establishment Realm, Level 13 Professional, Wind Phantom Dragon Template, Magic Cultivator, Intermediate Magician, Spiritual Power. 1,798,763 Magical Power. 81,257 Strength. 977 Agility. 951 Constitution. 1,148 Spirit. 1,823 Bloodline, Human, Sealed, Otsatsuki Tensigen Talents, Vigorous Spirit, Affinity, Fire Resistance, Thunder Firewood, Yin-Yang Release, Gravity Manipulation, Tensigen Special Ability, Hair Manipulation Abilities, Simple Tool Creation, Mech Game Character, Gun Mastery, Intangibility, Aman no Iwado Skills, Language Mastery, Skipping Steps, Advanced Gunmanship Mastery, Basic Swordsmanship, Observation Skill, Magic Aura, Erhu Mastery, Sweeping, Cleaving, Elemental Mysteries, Dual Swords Mastery, Eye of Holy Light, Small Fireball, Large Fireball, Lightning Spell, Summon Divine Beast, Cultivation Methods, Anti-Joint Grappling Machine, Immortal Martial Spiritual Power Shield, Primordial Chaos Skill, Hang Shan Swordplay, Chaotic Red Flower Rain, Hidden Weapon, Fireball Technique, Wind Control Art, Golden Light Charm, Object Control Art, Evergreen Skill, Multiple Shadow Clone Technique, Flying Thunder God Technique, 8 Gates Released Formation, Spirit Arrow Technique, Magician's Manual, given by Mom, Spirit Flame Technique, Eye Meridian Scripture, Dragon Break in the blink of an eye. 5 days had passed during this period. Liang Yue did not go out. Besides familiarizing himself with the concentrated cultivation secret techniques obtained from the lottery, he spent the rest of his time in the stronghold world running dungeons. The reason was naturally to quickly max out the 30-level limit given by his Wind Phantom Dragon template. Before, when he was still in the Naruto world, in the remaining time, Liang Yue hardly took action except when dealing with those Otsatsuki clan members. After all, after witnessing his combat power that almost dominated the entire battlefield in the Ninja World War, the ninjas of the other major ninja villages would generally not provoke him unless they were stupid. Experience cannot benefit the next level. Upgrades require eating fire dragon fruit to stimulate, and experience is automatically cleared after upgrading. The entire process of the plot only allowed Liang Yue to reach the 13th level. Moreover, when he crossed the 10th level, he was not able to awaken any new abilities from this template. This luck was really terrible. In addition, after Liang Yue had cultivated the evergreen skill to the end, in the remaining years, besides consolidating his cultivation and adapting to the Otsatsuki clan's bloodline inheritance, the problem of subsequent cultivation methods was entrusted to the system lottery in his spare time. This guy even had the leisure to traditionally practice the cultivation system in the magic manual left by his mother. Therefore, now in the identity column of his character panel, there is another existence of the magic cultivator. However, Liang Yue was obviously a little too optimistic before. Although the results of several lotteries were not bad, and the prizes were all good things that he could use, none of them contained the kind he wanted. Most fortunately, Liang Yue was not too anxious at this time. Although there were no cultivation methods that could further improve his cultivation realm, through continuous consolidation of what he had obtained and drawing inferences from other things, his strength was steadily improving. This is absolutely beyond doubt, leaving aside the immortal martial arts system, which has greatly increased in power after merging. The continuous improvement in the two other cultivation directions of professional and magic cultivator alone can bring Liang Yue a wealth of improvement while consolidating and strengthening the foundation of cultivation. It can also bring him many magical fields that he could not accurately touch in the past. For example, the Wind Phantom Dragon template. Each time you increase a level, in addition to choosing one of the 4 aspects of attack, defense, health, or elemental resistance by 5%, You can also get an additional 10 free attribute points, apart from the pure luck-based addition of Wind Phantom Dragon Bloodline abilities. These 10 attribute points are what Liang Yue values most. Take a look at his current character panel. In addition to strength and agility, Liang Yue has now improved both constitution and spirit to more than 1,000 points, and according to his past observations and speculations, when all 4 of his attribute points are promoted to 1,000 points, according to the system's previous upgrade rules, it is very likely to be the moment when the system's authority is upgraded next time. At that time, it will be the real test of his character. Leaving aside the improvement of various permissions and benefits, unlimited level lottery opportunities are the real big deal. At this moment, in the dim zombie mine, Liang Yue walked among the zombies, wielding 2 short swords wrapped in golden sword light. While his mind couldn't help but wander wherever he passed, patches of bald little zombies were turned into experience value data like mowing grass, and were included in this guy's panel along with a noisy wailing sound. Various gold coins, potion bottles, equipment, and skill secret books were also spread all over the ground. In addition, it is worth mentioning that the pair of iridium short swords that Liang Yue used to use before have been left in the Naruto world. To be precise, it was left to Hinata Hanabi, the little girl. New equipment has not had time to be made. Now the pair of short swords he is holding are just low-level goods exploded from the Grand Forest dungeon of the DNF series. However, although this pair of dual swords is not high-level, with a blessing of Liang Yue's foundation establishment sword light, it does not prevent him from instantly killing the surrounding zombies. Of course, the appearance of this situation also reflects a small problem from the side, that is, the level of the zombie mine dungeon is too low now, and it can no longer form too much powerful assistance for him, especially after the dungeon has been ravaged by Nana, Alwyn and others for many years. All kinds of skilled books have long been filled. Fortunately, after Liang Yue popularized the Wind Phantom Dragon template to others, in order to improve their respective levels as soon as possible, in the past few days the women's side has once again set off a small, high tide of collective team dungeon runs. By the way, there is also the issue of dungeons after the system authority is upgraded. According to the usual practice, I will also get an extra dungeon type lottery opportunity at that time. If I am lucky, there may be some surprises, but it's a pity the Wind Phantom Dragon template only has a growth limit of 30 levels. Even if new dungeons come out at that time, there will be no additional improvements, right, Alice? It seems that cultivation is the most reliable thing. As long as you are willing to work hard, you can keep getting stronger. The immortal martial path, I don't need to think about it for the time being, and this is not something that can be rushed. During this time, I should first look for ideas, so now, the only thing that can continue to let me cultivate step by step is the magic system. Okay, I'll go to the New York Sanctum again in a few days to see. Chapter 415 Unlimited Lottery Draw 3. Ling. The system has detected that the host's 4-dimensional body stats have all reached over 1,000 points, meeting the conditions to unlock the 4th level of system permissions. Host, do you want to upgrade system permissions immediately? Time flew by like a stream. Under Liang Yue's diligent efforts, finally, 10 days later, inside the zombie mine, at the moment when a certain zombie king fell to the ground with a wail once again, the experience bar of the Wind Phantom Dragon panel was filled. Subsequently, without any hesitation, Liang Yue took out a pitaya fruit from the Don't Starve world, which he had been longing for, quickly peeled off the skin, and swallowed it in large mouthfuls. A long-lost golden light of leveling up rose again, swirling and spreading out from Liang Yue as the center to the surrounding area. After using up all 10 newly acquired attribute points, the familiar system notification sound rang as expected. At this time, the ancient stone gate representing the elven forest and the tattered, deep mine entrance were lined up on his left, and right behind him, about 70 or 80 meters away, was a waterfall deliberately created by the women. Large swaths of flowing water were crashing down from above, accompanied by the bright light of day, creating bursts of rumbling splashing sounds, forming a rippling pool of water, and finally, it turned into a clear stream, and together with the underground river on the other side, merged into the sea outside the village. Around the pool, there were also scattered clusters of flowers and plants, and several butterflies that flew in from nowhere were fluttering their wings gracefully under the reflection of the sunlight and the water splashes. It added a bit of vigorous vitality to the entire underground cave. Adjacent to it was an underground building similar to a bar, filled with counters, wine, round tables, sofas, and even all kinds of fruits and snacks. Obviously, this was also a place arranged by Alwyn, Ms. Shizuka, and the others. Another 10 days have passed, plus the previous 5 days, That's a full half month. During this period, Liang Yue did almost nothing except going to dungeons, leveling up, and accumulating experience in the stronghold world with such wholehearted dedication. He has finally achieved his wish. Now he has improved his level by a whole 8 levels. Liang Yue's professional level has also been promoted from the original 13th level to the 21st level. Liang Yue identity, Immortal Martial Dao Practitioner, professional level 21, intermediate mage spiritual power. 1,798,927 magic power. 83,547 strength. 1,000 agility. 1,008 constitution. 1,148 energy. 1,823 bloodline, human, sealed, Otsutsuki. Fortunately, although half a month is not short, because of the difference in the flow of time between the stronghold world and the real world, according to the ratio, only 3 days have just passed in reality. Moreover, Liang Yue's high school is currently on spring break, so for him, almost nothing has been delayed in reality. Ding. The order has been confirmed. The system permission upgrade process is expected to last for 5 minutes. Please wait patiently, host. After hearing the system's words, Liang Yue relaxed completely, stretched his muscles a little, and then came to the rest area next to the waterfall. He sat down on the sofa with a plop, took a piece of cake from the table, took a couple of bites, and with a wave of his sleeve, a pile of equipment appeared on the wooden floor next to him. Rings, long knives, ebony swords, paper talismans, helmets, gold necklaces. Roughly counting, there were at least 40 or 50 pieces. All were drops produced from the zombie mine dungeon. Unfortunately, none of these low-level equipment could catch Liang Yue's eye in the next moment, except for a fine ebony necklace that was slightly interesting. The rest of the equipment was stuffed into the Amino Iwado in one go. The same fate befell a large number of drops that the woman had previously farmed from the dungeon, whether it was the elven forest or the zombie mine, especially the massive amount of equipment that Alwyn, Nana, and Rachel had accumulated over the past 10 years or so. None of them escaped the fate of being decomposed. Therefore, inside the Amino Iwado at this time, in addition to a small piece of equipment that had not yet been completely decomposed, there were already several more places composed of mineral raw materials such as gold, silver, copper, iron, magic crystals, various jade stones, crystals, and amber. These decomposed raw materials have also been categorized and aggregated on their own, forming regular pillars of ore raw materials, adding a completely different and beautiful color to the original monotonous, dark brown Amino Iwado cave. Ling. This system permission has been upgraded. The specific content has been listed in the system panel. Please check it yourself. Host. Soon. 5 minutes flashed by. After hearing the system's prompt, Liang Yue immediately stood up from the sofa. A hint of excitement that was difficult to conceal appeared on his tender old face. He came to the bar next to him and poured himself a full glass of ale. Glug glug. After taking a few big gulps, he licked his lips, and with a thought, he ordered the system. I want to draw a lottery. In the next moment, this unlimited level lottery turntable, which so far only exists in the system permission upgrade benefits, appeared in front of him again. Compared to the ordinary category of lottery permissions, the golden turntable at this time appeared extraordinarily dignified and unique, with a thin and long bright red pointer located in the center of the turntable. Of course, the biggest difference between this unlimited level lottery and the ordinary level of lottery is still in the prizes placed on the turntable, as the name suggests. Unlimited level means there is no level restriction. The prizes on the turntable are not restricted by Liang Yue's current strength or realm, and the lottery limit is fully opened. All things in the heavens and worlds, from the supreme artifacts, all kinds of innate spiritual treasures, to the most ordinary herbs, weapons, materials, etc., as well as various skills, alien powers, supernatural powers, and more abstract and mysterious existences are all included. Its sources even include various myths, xianxia, fantasy, high martial arts, magic, technology, games, and other different types of plane worlds, which can be described as all-encompassing. What he can draw at that time depends entirely on his luck, of course. The above only illustrates the vastness of the scope of this lottery, but the big turntable in front of him cannot really cover so many items. Liang Yue took a look and saw that only 36 items were placed on the turntable at this time. After a little identification, he had already discovered some seemingly ordinary objects, such as bells, broken swords, stones, broken leather, and glass beads. However, according to the principle of treasures concealing themselves, Liang Yue was not sure whether these things were really just ordinary objects among the remaining prizes, He also found many book-style secret manuals, pattern-like skills, gorgeous women's palace costumes, small bottles filled with unknown power, and even some strange things that he could not recognize at all. Looking at these inexplicable prizes on the turntable, Liang Yu's heart was filled with excitement and apprehension. At this moment he subconsciously scratched his scalp, exhaled a breath of turbid air, and then ordered the system start. Chapter 416 Intelligent Optical Brain. Begin, stop. Ling. Congratulations, host, you have obtained an enhanced intelligent optical brain in this unlimited level lottery draw. This item comes from a high-level technological plane. After staring at the thing for a moment, he finally sighed softly and helplessly accepted the results of this lottery draw. Alice, what else can I do if I don't accept it? It's not like I can redo the lottery draw. Looks like I still have to rely on myself for future cultivation methods and such. Tossing the sphere in his hand, Liang Yue quickly composed himself and took another swig of wine. Immediately, he silently circulated his power, forcing a drop of blood from his body through capillaries and pores to the tip of his finger. With a gentle flick, the bright red blood landed on the sphere. Almost upon contact, it was absorbed into it immediately afterward. The originally warm to the touch but exceptionally hard sphere quickly softened, then split into two parts. One part transformed into a fashionable dark blue wristwatch, appearing on Liang Yu's left wrist. The other part, after a few breaths, followed the lines of Liang Yu's palm and merged into his body. Subsequently, this part of the sphere began to quickly spread throughout his body, closely adhering to various internal organs, capillaries, nerve endings, and even the brain. Throughout the entire process, Liang Yue, through his keen senses and the power of his divine consciousness covering his body, naturally understood everything, but he did not stop it. After all, the system had previously guaranteed him that this thing would not betray him and would prioritize him above all else, so what did he have to worry about? Optical Brain Master recognition complete, currently integrated with a host, attempting to connect to the network. Warning. Optical Brain did not detect network signals in this world. Temporarily suspending network connection. Detected that the host's physical quality is abnormally strong. The race is suspected to be Yan Wang, with variant gene branches. Mental power level exceeds the limit of ordinary people, already possessing a certain degree of application ability. The body contains two relatively strong active energies, with attributes of electricity, fire, wood, etc., all of which can provide energy for the optical brain. The optical brain failed to capture enough electronic signals in the air. Therefore, it can currently only provide the host with a portion of the functions of this optical brain. These include object scanning, data collection and storage, energy sensing, light speed recording, intelligence analysis, health monitoring, virtual imaging, weather forecasting, external mimicry, and so on. The search and calculation range of this optical brain is within a radius of 30 kilometers centered on the host. Regarding the basic information of this optical brain, the host can manually view it at the optical brain avatar on the left wrist, or browse it through brainwaves. Next, please modify some basic settings of this optical brain. After the connection was completed, an emotionless electronic synthesized voice immediately rang in Liang Yu's mind. The method of communication was similar to the system, just a little more rigid. However, the capabilities of this intelligent optical brain were very powerful. Compared to the system, which required various conditions to be met to gradually unlock permissions, this thing would undoubtedly provide him with more personalized assistance at this stage. For example, after merging with the optical brain, the scene that Liang Yue now saw in his eyes had become somewhat different compared to usual. On the upper left of his vision, a light and shadow pattern like a mini-map in an online game appeared. With a thought, the mini-map could be zoomed in and out according to his will. The display range of the map, as the optical brain had previously introduced, included a radius of 30 miles centered on him. In addition, even the surrounding environmental factors such as temperature, weather, and wind speed were involved in the vision. With the turn of his gaze, when Liang Yue locked his sight on the area of the waterfall pool on the side, the swimming fish in the water, the butterflies flying in the bushes by the pool, and other living creatures all showed outlines depicting the surface of their bodies. Immediately afterward, more detailed information about these fish, flowers, plants, butterflies, and other things, such as their species, size, and color, also began to appear. I'll be damned, this is simply comparable to the machine scanning perspective of the Terminator played by Schwarzenegger back then. Compared to Star-Lord's steel armor, it seems to be a little more advanced. Looking at the scenes in his vision, Liang Yue did not feel the slightest discomfort for a moment. As if he had naturally begun to accept this setting after getting excited, This guy immediately started checking all kinds of moving or still objects in the familiar surroundings, as if he had found a fun toy. Parvis suddenly rose with excitement. Without a doubt, the appearance of this intelligent optical brain will add a lot of assistance to Liang Yue's future experiences in reality and the myriad worlds, especially in the real world, not to mention the various black technologies in Marvel, and the transformers that originally belonged to mechanical species hidden all over the world. The various monitoring behaviors of Liang Yue by forces such as S.H.I.E.L.D., Hydra, the Mei country government, and the military alone made him extremely annoyed. In order to be able to use various electrical appliances and electronic equipment with peace of mind in future daily life and eliminate worries, the role of the intelligent optical brain is absolutely beyond doubt. Thinking of this, the trace of regret and dissatisfaction that originally remained in Liang Yue's heart suddenly disappeared, and he began to devote himself wholeheartedly to the research of this optical brain. Personal settings. Let me see. Optical brain intelligence. Title, sound effects, personality simulation, virtual image. Well, isn't it similar to the steps of creating a character in some games? That's right. Sitting on the bar chair with his arms crossed, Liang Yue pondered for a moment, and then began to edit the intelligent optical brain on the virtual image. Let's set it as a 4 or 5-year-old child male, with a tiger-like head and brain, lively and active big eyes, thick eyebrows, with a bit of heroism on his face. Add some baby fat, but not too much. Wear a dark-colored Taoist robe on the outside, step on 1,000-layer soles. Give him a white right lapel lining, no head on the head, just tie a bun for the hairstyle, and just bring a wooden hairpin. Name. Let's call him Zia Wu. Chapter 417. Public World. At first glance, the virtual image of this optical computer Zia Wu actually looked a bit like Liang Yue from his earlier years, especially during the time in New Shaolin 5 Ancestors and the Heaven Sword and Dragon Saber world. In terms of appearance and temperament, he was practically a Q version of his younger self, but now, after years of growth and experience in the Naruto world, although his appearance is still the same, with hardly any changes, the current Liang Yue is no longer the same Liang Yue. His demeanor has already become completely different. This is undoubtedly another troublesome matter for Liang Yue, who will have to face his classmates and friends for a long time to come. After chatting with Zia Wu for about half an hour, Liang Yue temporarily suppressed his excitement and began to browse the information about this system permission upgrade. Overall, aside from some unimportant details and various optional fine-tuning and optimization projects, this system permission update is quite important to Liang Yue. First of all, the new round of unrestricted lottery has been completed, and according to previous practice, the permission to randomly select dungeons instances has also been updated according to his current strength range. The selection range of this will inevitably usher in a leap compared to the past. Liang Yue is very much looking forward to this. The second update is from the extension of the task system. After this round of permission upgrades, the coverage of system tasks will no longer be limited to the myriad worlds, and various random tasks will also be generated in reality. Of course, there are corresponding task rewards. Liang Yue feels that this is probably directly related to the unfolding of the Marvel plot in reality. Then, there is the update regarding the trials in the myriad worlds. The interval between this trial has not been extended. It is still once every 3 months, but when Liang Yue descends to another world, there is an additional identity option. That is to say, in the future, when conducting trials in the myriad worlds, he can choose an additional identity for himself to a certain extent. Although Liang Yue had automatically replaced the identity of the 4-eyed guy, Ishii, when he descended to the Apocalypse of Academy world, that time it was passive. The current identity option will appear before he enters the myriad worlds and will be chosen by him independently. The cost is that it will consume a certain amount of points. In this regard, it is a bit similar to the identity scroll that Liang Yue used when entering the Naruto world. However, the current identity selection permission can definitely not achieve the degree to which the previous identity scroll allowed Liang Yue to strengthen his own bloodline power. The reason why such an update content appears is that the system more wants to clear obstacles for Liang Yue's journey of trials in the myriad worlds. After all, as Liang Yue's own strength improves step by step, the world level he will descend to in the future will inevitably become more and more advanced. What follows is naturally the problem of the native consciousness of those planes, either actively or passively, showing malice and resistance. The emergence of such an identity disguise can effectively help him avoid many unnecessary troubles. In addition, after this permission update, the girls in the base world finally don't have to stare blankly across a world anymore. At that time, they will also get the right to enter the myriad worlds. Moreover, to some extent, it seems that Siko, Shizuka and others have more permissions than Liang Yue, the host. For example, during the trials in the myriad worlds, Liang Yue cannot enter the base world, but they can, although it cannot be done proactively, and each entry and exit requires Liang Yue's consent, but given the close relationship between everyone, this does not seem to make much difference. Finally, the most important content in this permission update is the opening of the public world. As the name suggests, the public world is a world that he can freely enter and exit myriad worlds. The way to obtain it is the same as dungeons instances. It needs to be randomly selected. The past represents this past week moments, and there are not many places where it intersects with the current Liang Yue. Thinking of this, someone couldn't help scratching his scalp, feeling a mix of emotions in his heart. Just at this moment, a flash of brilliance suddenly appeared in front of the dungeons instances gate in the distance, and a group of graceful figures began to appear there one after another. Needless to say, it was Elwin, Saya Takagi, Zaya Ozio and others who had just finished their dungeons instances trip. Seeing that Liang Yue was here, the girls walked towards him one after another. Naturally, Liang Yue had nothing to hide about the system permission upgrade. And then at the dining table, while eating melon seeds and drinking small wine, he told them in detail, "That's great. We can finally go to another world with Liang Yue-kun. That's not playing. Shizuka-ne trials are very dangerous, but even so, it's very interesting. Danger and opportunity coexist. We must team up at that time. Try not to go out alone, especially before we have absolute strength. But the strength gap between us and Shunkyu seems to be a bit big now. Isn't the selection of the trial world based on his strength?" "That's right, but we can't be afraid of wolves and tigers about this. We can only be careful. What do you say? At that time, try not to hold someone back. HMPH, we'd better learn disguise techniques such as, and we must be proficient in transformation ninjutsu. After all, there are so many of us women acting together. The target is a bit too big. Yes, what if we encounter lewd thieves and thugs at that time? So, we must be fully prepared before going. We must paint ourselves ugly. Or strength, in the final analysis, is still strength. Work hard to cultivate. Level up. We must bring more guns and firearms. Yes. As long as it can improve our ability to protect ourselves, it doesn't matter if we use those external things, plus the Minecraft character templates we already have. I think the other updates were fine, but when the girls learned from Liang Yue that they could go to the myriad worlds with him, as expected they suddenly burst out with 12 points of enthusiasm. At the round table, everyone spoke enthusiastically, imagining the future, and even started discussing future self-protection strategies. Liang Yue was also very satisfied with the girls' reaction while feeling novelty and joy. The necessary caution must not be lost. After all, after really arriving in the myriad worlds, it is impossible for him to always be by their side as a nanny. If they encounter any unexpected situations, if Liang Yue is beyond his reach, they still have to rely on themselves at critical moments. Chapter 418 Water Margin Heroes and Diablo 2. System, I want to draw public world now. While the women beside him were still discussing animatedly, Liang Yue took a swig of wine and communicated with the system in the next moment. As soon as he finished speaking, a light screen suddenly popped up in the void in front of him unexpectedly. The selection of the public world was not like the previous lotteries. Appearing on a large turntable, what appeared in front of him at this moment was actually a 9-palace grid-shaped device. Each grid represented a different world scene. Among them, some were filled with violent astral winds. In the midst of battles, the martial artists' every move and stance seemed to possess immense power, cracking the earth and causing ripples to spread frequently in the void. Some were filled with chaotic magic, dazzling and colorful. The intense mage duels submerged the entire scene, leaving only dazzling light spots and rapidly changing energy colors. Some worlds were staging large-scale battle formations, with massive numbers of soldiers arranged in neat phalanxes. Each soldier formed formations according to specific positions, and under the leadership of the generals in front, they charged and fought bravely, with war drums shaking the sky. Some worlds were enacting migrations and hunts between magical beasts, while others resembled Star Wars, with various robots, fighters, and laser weapons presented on the cosmic battlefield. Liang Yue even saw a familiar figure in one of the grids. It was Misaka Mikoto firing a railgun at a large robot. Are there only 9 options for the public world? Looking at the squares flashing and switching constantly in front of him, Liang Yue's eyes flickered at this moment, with a hint of excitement hidden within. Alwyn, Hinata, Nana, and others at the round table also noticed the situation here at this time, so they gathered around him one after another full of curiosity and anticipation. They watched the scene in the light screen start. As Liang Yue's voice fell, the 9-palace grid that was originally jumping non-stop instantly froze into 9 different worlds at the same time. A frame shining with different colors began to jump between these 9 grids. The frequency of this jump was extremely fast, and there seemed to be no rules to follow at all. In just a few breaths, it had exceeded everyone's optic nerve reaction speed. Under the fleeting light and shadows, it actually illuminated the entire 9-palace grid. Liang Yue was also unable to escape this fate, so he could only take a step back and continue to adopt the blind guessing strategy. Stop, Ling. Once the plane gate is landed, it cannot be changed, and without the host's consent, no one can enter or exit through this plane gating. With the current system permissions possessed by the host, you can freely adjust the time flow rate between the public world and the stronghold world. Currently, the maximum time flow rate ratio between the two is 10:1, or 1:10 ding. With the current system permissions possessed by the host, you will receive 100 free qualification for introducing aborigines from the public world. Note, these aborigines are different from the villagers of the stronghold world. If you want to give the aborigines of the public world the character template of my world, you need to pay an extra quota of villagers from the stronghold world, Ling. After the public world is officially opened, the task system will be covered accordingly. Please look forward to it. Water Margin Heroes. I remember that there was a TV series in Zhangjiang in my previous life that seemed to be called this name, right? Or is it some unknown game world, system, Ling? It is not the same plane world, but the name happens to be the same. This public plane is a comprehensive martial arts world. The selection criteria strictly follow the host's own upper and lower limits of combat power, which is fair and effective. Then my lower limit here is too low. Hearing this, Liang Yue twitched the corners of his mouth and muttered to himself. He was naturally a little dissatisfied with the result of his first public world selection. That feeling was like when you were grabbing red envelopes during the new year. The total amount of funds in front of you was as high as hundreds of millions, but in the end, you only got a few cents. In Liang Yue's impression, Water Margin, as the crystallization of classical literature, is not a world known for its martial power, although the heroes in it are mostly fierce and unusual, capable of fighting 10 enemies with one, and even the worst of them have 2 skills to stand on. The overall style is more inclined to storytelling and realism. However, the system said before that it is a martial arts world. Thinking of this, Liang Yue couldn't help but touch his chin again, sinking into deep thought, wondering if he had misunderstood something. After everything settled down, the women behind him became serious again, discussing animatedly Water Margin. I remember, that seems to be during the Song Dynasty in China. It's the Northern Song Dynasty. There seems to be a rubbing version of Water Margin on the bookshelf below. I have read it before. It is a very interesting place. I heard that China was very prosperous during the Song Dynasty. How about we go shopping together then? Okay. Having the opportunity to go back to ancient times to play is something only we can do. Maybe we can meet some historical celebrities. I think things shouldn't be that simple. Oh? What do you mean? Just like the system said before, that is a martial arts world indeed. The world in the original Water Margin is closer to real history. Although it appears in ancient times, it is definitely not a martial arts world. That is to say, the combat power there should be very strong. So discussing this, the women couldn't help but their eyes lit up, and they unanimously turned their attention to someone beside them. However, Liang Yue at this moment had already put his attention on another piece of permission update content system. I want to draw a new copy. As Liang Yue's voice fell, the familiar turntable finally appeared again. With a heavy heart, he didn't even look at it and directly entered the selection process. Stop. Ling. Congratulations, host, you have obtained the large copy Diablo 2 in this copy selection. This copy is divided into 3 different difficulties: normal, nightmare, and hell. They need to be opened in sequence. In addition to the difference in experience and burst rate between different difficulties, you can obtain Diablo-style professional templates and additional reward bonuses when clearing the level. So powerful. Looking at the mini copy gate floating in front of him, listening to the system's prompt in his ear, Liang Yue couldn't believe his ears for a moment. The whole person was slightly stunned. And then he subconsciously looked at the women beside him, who were also stunned by this surprise. Now the problem of our professional templates is solved. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 419 Osborne and Chapter X27, Extracurricular Visits. In my dreams, I feel YHT, I feel Lena. Just as Liang Yue walked out of the stronghold world and returned to reality, A pleasant mobile phone ringtone reached his ears with a thought. Xiao Wu had already transferred the call, and at the same time, a light screen popped up from Liang Yu's wristwatch. The caller was Sam. Hello Sam. Oh thank God, you finally answered the phone. Liang, I've been camping for a while. What's up, Sam? Camping? Did you go hunting? I envy you, buddy. Here's the thing, Peter, some people from the club, and I organized a field trip. The location is at Oscorp, which Gwen managed to apply for with great difficulty. By the way, Gwen is currently interning at Oscorp. I heard there are many strange creatures there. They were all born through the latest gene synthesis technology. How about it? Are you interested, Oscorp? As far as I know, didn't you go home before, Sam? And your home seems to be near Los Angeles. Oh don't mention it, buddy, I was already at the airport, but my mom suddenly called at that time, saying that she was going on a trip. Just her and my dad. The school dorms are closed during this time, and I've been staying at Peter's aunt's house. You should have told me, Sam, it would be great to stay at my house. I called, but no one answered at the time. Oh, sorry buddy, how about this? Remember the apartment I rented near the school before? You can stay there during this time. Let's talk about that later, Liang. What about my previous suggestion, about the Oscorp field trip? Of course. Okay, then it's settled, buddy. Tomorrow at 9 in the morning, we'll meet at the entrance of Oscorp. Okay Sam, I'll bring the apartment key with me then. Also, I'll treat you to dinner then. Okay, it's a deal, buddy. Oscorp field trip, spring break. If Liang Yu's guess was correct, this field trip should be directly related to the major event of Peter becoming Spider-Man. For this iconic event in the Marvel world, Liang Yue naturally had no reason to miss it. Being bitten by a spider can trigger the body's mutation and evolution. He wanted to witness this magical event himself. I just don't know which generation Peter's abilities and plot will develop towards afterwards. Does firing spider silk rely on a special propulsion device, or can it be directly ejected from the body? Also, I don't know if his uncle died or not. Different from the first and second generations, in the new generation of Little Spider Holland, his uncle seemed to have passed away due to some reason very early on. It was precisely because he had not undergone a loving education through a deathbed message that he inevitably acted somewhat unstable, so that Stark had to come out to clean up the mess later. In fact, in this seemingly Marvel world in front of him, many things have already deviated from the original plot. For example, the international class he is in. For example, Peter and Gwen both transferred to the current school. And for example, Sam, a young man who shouldn't have appeared in New York, has now become his classmate. Most importantly, with Liang Yu's arrival and intervention, the original plot has been influenced to a certain extent. With great power comes great responsibility. Unconsciously, green had filled the entire line of sight, and even the rose vines climbing on the ancient walls had sprouted new buds. Liang Yue took a sip of the drink in his hand, and then fell into daze. At this moment, he was the only one left in the manor. Senior Siko and teacher Shizuka had already eagerly gone to the dungeon before, and even little King Kong had joined in. Diablo II's undoubtedly a wonderful large dungeon. Through the information attached after the extraction was completed, Liang Yue knew that the existence of that special area was almost identical in form to the game. The same BIM world, the same simple camp at the beginning, 5 acts of levels, and rigid functional NPCs different from the previous Grand Forest, zombie mini and other one-time dungeons that refresh upon entry and exit. Diablo II is a magical existence that can save progress. You can enter alone, or you can team up to farm maps, but the dungeon is just a dungeon, not a real existing world due to the different entry order and time. Once the timing and team are missed, a new dungeon will appear upon entry. For example, the group of women and monkeys in the Stronghold world at this time have formed 3 small teams respectively for various reasons, and entered them in turn. Although the 3 teams have entered the Diablo II dungeon, they do not see each other even if they are all staying in the rogue encampment at this time. Without taking action, this situation will continue until they clear the entire difficulty of the Diablo II dungeon before it can be lifted. In the process, if someone is unable to enter the dungeon in time for some reason, the progress completed by the others in the team will also be considered completed. In addition, the monsters in the dungeon map will always maintain a refresh rate of once a day, and if you accidentally die in the process of farming monsters, you can be resurrected by following the classic corpse run mode in the Diablo world. Liang Yue decided to form a team alone because the strength gap with others was too large. However, he was not in a hurry to enter the dungeon at this time. Before, in order to collect enough attribute points for system permission upgrades, this guy was a little allergic to dungeon farming. In addition, he had just returned from the Naruto world, so he needed some time to adjust in order to adapt to the differences in lifestyle and rhythm between the 2 places as soon as possible. In addition, The plain gate of the water margin Harrow's public world has also been placed in the stronghold world. The location is directly below the dungeon cave under the joint work of a dozen iron picks. The second floor of the cave was quickly excavated. Regarding this public world, Liang Yue and others were also very cautious and did not intend to open it and enter it for the time being. Chapter 423 Mobile Device. Xiao Wu, how's the check going? My home network, and those electronic devices, have you found any Trojans or backdoors? After Liang Yue sat in front of the door and finished his hot chocolate, he immediately contacted his smart light brain. In fact, the moment Liang Yue walked out of the stronghold world and came to reality, he had already issued an order to Xiao Wu to maintain and defend his mana report. Master. The home network and appliances have been defended. Currently, Xiao Wu has expelled all abnormal external signals and repaired the backdoors in the software applications. Now Xiao Wu is upgrading the home firewall to ensure sufficient protection against subsequent electronic and network intrusions. Master, do you want to pursue and monitor those intruders? No need. Those who have designs on me are nothing more than a few places. Now that we are in a foreign country, there is no need to dwell on these things for the time being. By the way, help me keep an eye on the news in China. I want to go back in a while. Okay, Master. In addition, Xiao Wu previously discovered a biotech tank in the basement of the Master's house that exceeds the current technological level of Earth in this world. The item itself has good scientific research potential. Master, do you want Xiao Wu to allocate an extra portion of computing power for technological deduction in this area? Biotech tank? Basement. Oh, are you talking about that thing? Let's go and take a look together. After hearing Xiao Wu's words, Liang Yue recalled it slightly and determined what it was referring to at this time. What appeared in front of him was a thick stone wall, and behind this stone wall was the place where the thing was located. After using a pickaxe to chisel open the stone wall, the so-called biotech tank finally revealed its true face. In a dark space, a cylindrical glass tank was standing in the center of the room, filled with a light green liquid, emitting a shimmering glow. Surrounded and soaked in this liquid, a young lady with exaggerated body proportions was floating there comfortably. This woman's name is Tifa. Well, to be precise, it should be called a real life clone Tifa. This was a reboot doll that Liang Yue accidentally won from the system. According to the introduction, this thing seems to be a private custom-made product of a heavyweight game enthusiast from a certain technological plane, and the so-called reboot doll, apart from not having a soul, is actually a healthy adult female body. Liang Yue still remembered that after he got it, the eyes of the women in the stronghold world began to look at him strangely. Facing such a prize that made people laugh and cry, for a time, Liang Yue didn't know how to deal with it, so he had to temporarily seal it up. Of course, the reason why the intelligent brain Xiao Wu said that this thing has good deduction potential at this time is probably not because it is interested in this clone. What Xiao Wu really values should only be the precise operating table under the glass cylinder where Miss Tifa is located, and those special light green liquids, although the thing was just an accessory that came with the young lady. If we talk about the real technological content, it is indeed higher. Liang Yue vaguely remembered that the system said when introducing the lottery that this biological workstation has cleaning, maintenance and repair functions. Is this what you're talking about? Yes, Master. This instrument is actually a gene-level maintenance device with a certain technological content. If it is used as a foundation, Xiao Wu can more easily deduce some more advanced biotechnologies in the same series. About what extent can it be done? Hearing this, Liang Yue looked at the figure quietly floating in the liquid and unconsciously stroked his chin. Gene-level repair technology and its derivative technologies, such as scientific research instruments and technologies that can be applied in treatment, repair, recovery, nutrition, beauty, and other aspects. By demonstrating with relevant scientific data from the real world, we can also deduce corresponding cloning, strengthening, and other deeper-level technologies, and based on this, we can carry out divergent deduction. Again, in short, as long as there is sufficient theoretical or physical basis, Xiao Wu can continue to deduce. Then let's do it. How long will it take to produce results? Hearing Xiao Wu's words, Liang Yue naturally had no reason to object. It depends on how much computing resources Xiao Wu can mobilize. Theoretically speaking, the better the hardware conditions, the faster the deduction speed. In that case, you can let go and do it. Some useful instruments and components can be ordered online if they can be ordered online. If you can't order them, give me a list and I will be responsible for solving it. While speaking, Liang Yue turned around smartly, and was about to leave when he suddenly had a thought and remembered something, so he continued to say to Xiao Wu regarding the issue of funds, do you have any solutions? In fact, Liang Yue himself is naturally not short of money after all, after so many heavens and worlds, not to mention the jewelry, antiques, and various living materials that filled the warehouses in the stronghold world. In terms of gold reserves alone, Liang Yue alone can be worth a world power, but he was really unwilling to take his massive gold resources and specially find someone to exchange for US dollars. So that's why he asked this question. Regarding this point, Master can rest assured. Although Xiao Wu has principled clauses that cannot violate the laws of various countries, as long as it is not within the scope prohibited by law, there are still many ways to make money. The safest and most convenient way is to obtain profits in stock market transactions. With Xiao Wu's own intelligence gathering ability and system computing speed, this is almost a surefire business. Oh? Then go do it, okay, Master. But Xiao Wu still needs a certain amount of initial capital support. How much money is currently in my account? A total of 87.4513 million US dollars, then transfer 50 million to the stock market, and the funds for purchasing various instruments and raw materials in the future will also be drawn from this part. Okay, Master. Three-dimensional maneuver gear, from the world of giants. With it, you can use buildings or tall trees and rocks to soar through the sky. After mastering it proficiently, you will have a certain combat ability piece. After the inflatable gas is used up, please find a replacement yourself. The price is 300 points. The price is not expensive, but what's the use of this broken thing now? I can fly myself. 3 natural days have passed, and the system wall has also ushered in a new round of product refresh. But looking at the items on the shelves in front of him, although someone had the intention to buy one as a collection, but when he glanced at his current points balance with a corner of his eye, he finally decided to give up. Chapter 421 Bid It. The next day, early morning, Liang Yue, who had been reading magic books all night at the New York Sanctum, glanced at the digital clock in the lower right corner of his retina and realized it was almost time to gather. So, after saying hello to the dozing Sherlock next to him, he cast an attention-shifting spell on himself, drew a circle in front of him, and stepped into the block where the Osborne group was located. Since it was still early, Liang Yue even had the leisure to buy a large Mexican burrito from a roadside food stall. As he approached a meeting point, he ate. As he walked towards the opposite side of the Osborne group, Sam and Peter were already waiting there, along with Ned, the Asian fatty from Peter's club, and Sam's neurotic roommate, Leo. Besides them, there were also a few boys and girls from the class. However, Liang Yue wasn't very familiar with them, belonging to the kind of nodding acquaintance where he couldn't even bother to remember their names. As for Liang Yue's deskmate, the cute and shy island girl Yamamoto Neko, she had already returned to her country during the spring break to reunite with her family, so she would probably miss this extracurricular activity. Hi Liang Yue, over here. Turning his head, Peter and Sam quickly waved him over after seeing someone's unhurried figure approaching. Good morning, did you have breakfast? I bought a lot of popcorn chicken from over there. As he spoke, Liang Yue handed over the paper box in his hand. Several people nearby politely reached out, and in a few moments, they had wiped it clean. Speaking of which, because the Ice and Fire novel written by Liang Yue before was completed and published, and it topped the North American bestseller list despite Liang Yue himself not getting along very well with the students in the international class. Others seemed particularly attentive to him after he became a successful person in the eyes of others. At the very least, they brought a touch of goodwill to his daily extracurricular life. After passing the security check, before they had walked a few steps, Gwen, dressed in OL attire and wearing black-rimmed glasses on her nose, appeared in front of everyone. After a brief chat, she led them towards the group's internal exhibition area. During the process, the classmates behaved like Grandma Liu visiting the Grandview Garden, with faces full of novelty, constantly looking around and paying attention to the researchers in white coats coming and going. When a shapely lady passed by from the corridor next to them, Sam's roommate Leo even picked up the camera hanging around his neck and secretly snapped a few close-up shots. Soon, the group arrived at a large room decorated a bit like a library. Gwen then acted as a commentator, slowly walking forward while occasionally turning around to introduce the nearby exhibits to everyone. This is a high-precision electron microscope, the most advanced in the entire eastern region. There are probably more than 32,000 kinds of spiders collected here. This one in front of you is the Australian Delina spider. Someone once wrote a book specifically about its story. This is a black widow, a very dangerous spider with venom. If you are accidentally bitten by it, this side compared to Liang Yue's refreshing and unburdened appearance, the other classmates traveling with him were mostly fully armed, with at least a camera or high-definition mobile phone on them. Following Gwen's explanation, They began to take pictures of things they were interested in as souvenirs. Among them, Peter was the most active. Whenever Gwen introduced a new species, he would rush forward to take pictures. In addition to the spider as the protagonist, the capable and charming Gwen would also be left in his photos. Liang Yue also saw this in the back and secretly found it a little funny. It seems that I have to pay more attention to these two in the future. As a classmate, at the very least I can't let them end up in a situation where they are separated by heaven and man like in the original plot. Thinking this in his heart, Liang Yue suddenly had another thought in his mind. Speaking of which, in this Marvel multiverse, didn't Gwen in some worlds also become Spider-Man? Report, Master, what's the matter? Xiao Wu has discovered some biotechnology data in the Osborn group in front of us, which will be helpful to our research. Do you want to append it, huh? Didn't you say before that you can only act within the scope permitted by law? Reporting to the Master, the biological science research experiments inside the Osborn group are illegal operations and are not within the scope of legal protection. You can still play like this, okay? Then you decide for yourself. Copy down anything that is helpful. After a brief exchange with the intelligent brain, Liang Yue returned to the team again. Regarding Gwen's passionate explanation not far away, he could actually see that the other party had put in a lot of effort for this, including today's makeup. Unfortunately, Liang Yue was not interested in these things. From the gaze that the woman cast at him every time she introduced something, Liang Yue naturally saw something beyond classmate affection, but unfortunately, he was also not interested in the other party. The reason why Liang Yue came here today was only to witness it. Of course, it would be even better if he could trigger some tasks along the way. It's coming after a while. When the spider-related part of this visit was about to come to an end, Liang Yue clearly observed through his spherical vision that a brightly colored spider had climbed up to the roof along the column at some point. Now it is spitting silk all the way. Hanging down and located directly below this spider is precisely Peter, who is currently holding a camera and taking pictures of Gwen. Using synthetic ribonucleic acid to create a brand new genome, and mixing it with the genes of 3 kinds of spiders, put it into the bodies of these 15 spiders. Yes, that's right, the 15 spiders in front of you are new species born through genetic editing technology, which are very rare and dangerous, but there are only 14 in these glass tanks. Gwen is a tech geek. The Chinese little fatnet at this time played his excellent observation ability very well, pointing out Gwen's mistake to the glass tank in front of him. What? Gwen frowned upon hearing this and leaned closer. There should be one missing, Sam interjected from the side. Oh, I guess the researchers are using it for experiments, Gwen said somewhat uncertainly. At this moment, the spider originally suspended on the spider silk seemed to have sensed some delicious food, and suddenly jumped down towards the Dutch brother below. It happened to land on his hand that was pressing the shutter, and then took a hard bite. During the process, Liang Yue clearly felt the abnormality of this spider through his keen vision. Whether it is fate or fate, in short, it bit. Chapter 422 Dr. Lizard. Hisaro, caught off guard, Peter immediately felt a sharp pain, gritted his teeth, and instinctively shook his aching hand. Unfortunately, the spider on his hand was like a piece of chewing gum at this moment, seemingly determined to stick with him. With a light leap, it actually landed directly on Peter's carefully styled hair. Don't move, Peter. There's a spider on your head. Don't be afraid, watch me. I've always been particularly good at dealing with these. Sam, who was beside him, had obviously noticed the situation. His eyes wide as he spoke, he quickly reached out to grab it. Who knew that this spider was exceptionally alert, using the opportunity to jump directly onto the pad of Sam's index finger. Another fierce bite. Ah, bitten. Sam screamed and naturally shook his hand violently. The spider took the opportunity to leap, its small body drawing a smooth arc in the air. Finally, it landed on Gwen's fair little hand. Ah, Sam, you're such a blockhead. Liang Yue, feeling a strange sensation in his heart, couldn't bear to watch any longer. Rolling his eyes, his left hand suddenly reached out, and with a gentle pinch of his index finger and thumb, he grabbed the middle of the little thing's body, holding the red and blue spider in his hand. No matter how it struggled, it was useless. Is this thing poisonous? Looking at the spider in his hand, and then at Gwen's little hand with a red mark, Sam and Peter behind him had the same injuries. Liang Yue then asked, this spider's venom is very strong, but fortunately it's not fatal. Moreover, our Osborn Group's laboratory has specially formulated an antidote serum. Come over here. At this moment, a white man in a white coat, with an empty right arm, walked over and stood not far away, saying although this man had a scholarly air unique to intellectuals, and his face was kind and amiable, Liang Yue could still see a resolute temperament in his eyes when he looked at his figure. It was estimated that this man must have been a soldier and his real identity should be one of the villains in the Spider-Man series. Dr. Lizard Liang Yue could also confirm this from the name tag on his chest. Kurt Connor soon. The spider in his hand was deftly placed back into the glass tank by a staff member with tweezers, the whole process appearing exceptionally cautious. Gwen, Peter, and Sam were later injected with a special antitoxin serum and told to get a good night's sleep to express his apology. Professor Connors also gave each of the three a business card afterward, saying that if there were any adverse sequelae, they could call him, and he would be responsible to the end. Subsequently, the professor left in a hurry, waving goodbye to the others in the group. Liang Yue took the three of them in a taxi to his apartment near the school, and settled them down separately after the three of them fell asleep groggily, and he gave them each a healing spell. He went to the kitchen to prepare something to eat. Judging from the current situation, Sam's symptoms of poisoning are the most serious. Peter and Gwen seem to have good resistance to this spider venom to a great extent, and after falling asleep, Peter and Gwen's bodies actually began to mutate while strengthening their bodies. A spider silkland-like thing was actually born in the area where their hands were bitten. It seems that their situation is similar to the first-generation Spider-Man. Speaking of which, is this a coincidence? Or a specific example? Regarding the matter of being bitten by a specific spider and undergoing a body mutation, becoming a superhuman in the eyes of others, Liang Yue originally thought that this was just Holland's benefit from his parents' legacy. According to his deduction, the process was probably that Peter's parents took their son's genes and synthesized a special spider after being bitten by this spider. It would then activate its own genetic code, becoming a literal powerhouse. The relationship between Peter and the spider was probably like the existence of a lock and key, a one-to-one match, belonging to two sides of the same coin that opened the path to mutation. Apart from Peter, no one else could achieve the evolution of the organism itself through this spider. Regarding this point, just look at Sam's current situation. This poor young man, although he had already been injected with the antitoxin serum, still couldn't escape the sequelae of poisoning in his sleep. He was covered in sweat, his face was pale, and he kept moaning. His expression was quite painful, but Gwen's appearance broke Liang Yue's long-held deduction. Perhaps Gwen can only be considered a special case, although he couldn't figure it out. He didn't dwell on it afterward. After putting the prepared food into his storage backpack, Liang Yue picked up the notebook next to him and sat in the living room to surf the internet. By the way, Xiaoyu, does this world have the game My World? Reporting Master, according to Xiaoyu's just investigation, the game in Master's memory does not exist here, and there are no similar projects even in development. In that case, you should make it regarding the game's operating rules. Follow the memory of the Stronghold world or my brain. Okay, Master. The idea of creating the My World game was not a whim of Liang Yue. The reason why such a game was needed was to make it more convenient for him and the women in the Stronghold world to explore the rules of this world, especially regarding the application of redstone technology. Perhaps because the previous healing spell had worked, the three people in their sleep did not sleep until dawn the next day like the little spider in the original plot. It was only 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon when the three of them walked out of the room one after another. Seeing this, Liang Yue pretended to walk towards the kitchen and brought out the prepared food. After a series of mutations and developments, Peter and Gwen at this time, although their bodies had not changed much, and their appearances were still the same as before, their respective mental outlooks had undergone great changes. It would not be an exaggeration to say that they were radiant and reborn, especially Holland. Peter, the high-degree glasses that had been on the bridge of his nose had quietly been taken off, his eyes becoming more and more piercing, with a happy expression on his face. As for Gwen, perhaps because of the differences in personality and gender, she, as a woman, appeared somewhat reserved and introverted, seemingly trying to hide her current difference. And Sam's hand was swollen, his face was full of color, and he looked like he hadn't woken up yet. Chapter 423 Diablo II Instances. After seeing Sam's unlucky image, Liang Yue also twitched the corner of his mouth secretly, then turned around and walked into the kitchen, opened a bottle of ancient fruit wine, and took out 4 glass goblets. Oh buddy, my current situation doesn't seem very suitable for drinking. Looking at the deep azure liquid that someone was slowly pouring into the goblet in front of him, Sam refused with a look of utter despair. This is a precious medicinal wine, Sam. It has a good detoxification effect and can be used to replenish the body's vitality. After pouring half a glass for each of the 3 people at the dining table, Liang Yue lowered his head and poured a little for himself before continuing. Your current situation is perfect for drinking. Is this a mysterious product from your eastern country? Peter on the side couldn't help but pick up the glass in front of him and carefully examined the wine inside before asking more or less. I brewed it myself, and the ingredients used are a bit special. I didn't care about it at first, but later a senior old wizard told me this wine has a very good effect, so I began to value it at the dinner table. Liang Yue was quite frank about some of his past foolish deeds, especially Sam. The bitten finger was originally swollen like a rotten carrot, and the flesh in the nail cover was showing a purplish-red color as a result. Just because he took 2 sips of wine, the toxins in his body immediately dissipated at a speed visible to the naked eye. His sickly and somewhat pale face also began to quickly regain its former health and rosiness. Seeing this situation, Holland on the side exclaimed in disbelief and kept asking about the brewing and ingredient details of this wine in comparison. Gwen on the side seemed much more reserved, only interjecting a few words occasionally when the atmosphere was good between the lines. She seemed to want to inquire about some information about the mysterious side of the earth from Liang Yue. After the sky outside the window gradually darkened, Gwen and Peter got up to say goodbye. Sam was pulled by Liang Yue to the management office downstairs to apply for a temporary pass, and by the way, Liang Yue also renewed the fee for his current apartment for another 2 years after learning the mage's opening technique, although this residence was dispensable to him. After Xiao Wu reaped the leaks in the stock market, Liang Yue became even less concerned about things like US dollars. Without a word along the way, he returned to the manor located on the northern edge of New York City. In a short while as the sun set, the castle was bathed in a sunset glow that was about to fade away, and against a backdrop of large ancient trees, it still carried a bit of romantic poetry in its tranquility. It's just a pity that the castle was not lit at the moment, and it seemed a bit dim. It seems that the women in the stronghold world are still addicted to the dungeon and cannot extricate themselves. With this thought in mind, the lighting system in the manor was taken over by Xiao Wu in the next moment. Moreover, before entering the stronghold world, Liang Yue also instructed the intelligent brain Xiao Wu to leave a clone program specifically responsible for the surveillance cameras in the residence at night. The scene in front of him flashed, and Liang Yue came to the small village in the stronghold world, different from the scene of night falling outside. Due to the different time flow between the two places, at a ratio of 1 to 5, the stronghold world at this time was a scene of bright sunshine. Mom, your son doesn't have any cultivation methods to practice for the time being. Do you have any peerless divine skills that are hidden from the world? Coming to the underground cave, before entering the dungeon, Liang Yue sent a message to his mother, who was retreating somewhere in the stronghold world, through the villager exchange platform with a hint of hope in his heart. Unexpectedly, only a second or two passed before his mother's reply arrived. Figure it out yourself. You're too lazy to even finish writing a punctuation mark. Looking at the advice from his mother, Liang Yue immediately rolled his eyes, and then strode towards the dungeon gate in front of him, which was shaped like an old church swish. After passing through a burst of sticky sensation, Liang Yue only felt a tightening around his body. And in the next moment, he came to a dim world. Looking around, the place where he was at this time was roughly similar to the layout in the game. In front of him was a relatively simple camp, with a bonfire burning brightly in the center of the camp. Not far from the bonfire, there was a box, and next to it was a middle-aged man with a weathered face staring at him blankly. Seeing that Liang Yue had noticed him, the man opened his mouth and said hello to him today. After that, he stopped talking. That's right, after all, Liang Yue has not yet obtained the Diablo 2 game template, so it's useless to talk about operations or anything. At the three corners of the camp, Akira, Charsi, and Geet each occupied a spot. Kashio was wandering around near the bonfire, and the rest were just a few rogue archers standing guard at the entrance of the camp. Seeing this scene, a long-lost sense of familiarity suddenly rose in Liang Yue's heart. As someone who had been there before, he was naturally very familiar with the Diablo 2 game plot, so he didn't bother to say anything more, ran to Akira, took the first quest, and walked straight out of the camp. If there was anything different in the dungeon at this time compared to the real game, it must be the perspective and details. Walking in the dim dungeon world in front of him, everything around him was so real. Although the NPCs in the camp had no souls, they looked no different from humans in reality. Similarly, the zombies, fallen ones, hedgehog monsters, etc. scattered around the Bloodmoor at this time were all extremely realistic. With a light sniff, the air still carried a faint smell of blood. However, Liang Yue's attention was not focused on this at this time. With a previous Grand Forest and Zombie Mine as a foundation, he already had some understanding of the existence of dungeons. What's more, as a cultivator who had just flattened the Naruto world purely by strength and whose realm had already reached the foundation establishment stage, the little scene in front of him naturally could not arouse any interest in him. With a light tap of his feet, Liang Yue had already arrived at his quest location. the entrance to the evil cave located on the Blood Moor, in just a few breaths in the process. A few zombies and fallen ones that happened to be in his path were cut in half by an invisible golden thread in the blink of an eye. This is a variant application after the sword ore reaches the foundation establishment stage. It is somewhat similar to the sword transformation into silk in some novels. It looks inconspicuous, but it is a way to condense energy to the extreme to deal with the enemy. It's just that most people use the true ki or sword ki in their bodies to form silk, but Liang Yue is using sword aura to transform into silk at this time. Chapter 424 Corpse on Fire. Manifesting a glow into threads. This was part of the power expansion that Liang Yue had researched during his free time in the latter half of his time in the Naruto world. Besides compressing the sword's glow to its limit, forming a thread-like shape, he also developed a way to launch sword-shaped light and shadows from a certain range around his body to attack and defend without using a weapon. However, compared to turning the sword's glow into threads, this form of attack indirectly formed by mental power was freer, but its power was much weaker. In fact, if you carefully analyze the pattern, you can find that Liang Yue was consciously guiding his sword glow techniques towards the direction of sword domain during that time, but you can't blame him. After all, the nameless sword manual he had before didn't record any further development direction of the sword glow after the foundation establishment stage. He could only rely on his own feelings and inspiration from novels and anime from his previous life to explore and move forward. However, compared to the power expansion in the direction of sword glow, Liang Yue wanted to improve and create techniques more in the direction of his innate affinity for lightning, fire, and wood. It's just a pity that the appearance of lightning, fire, and wood ultimately originated from the martial arts realm, a chance encounter after the Ziksha true ki advanced to the innate realm. In other words, it is a manifestation of magical power born from the martial arts lineage. Even if Liang Yue hadn't drawn this innate affinity from the system, he would still have had the opportunity to comprehend this power on his own. It's just that, limited by the constraints of the cultivation environment, the probability of this happening would have been a bit low, and when he was in the Naruto world, due to the appearance of some unknown factor, Liang Yue's martial arts true ki was temporarily sealed. In this situation, he had no choice but to turn to the path of cultivation. Everything returns to one, with no flaws. So, before a higher level cultivation method appears, my main focus at this stage, in addition to cultivating the magic system in terms of the main cultivation method, is to further develop and utilize the innate affinity of lightning, fire, and wood. Walking inside the evil cave, the sight that met his eyes was a dark cave scene. The air was filled with a damp and rotten smell. Every few tens of meters, there would be a magic torch inserted on the cave wall, barely able to illuminate the surroundings. Liang Yue was walking forward along the pitted ground at this time. However, with a combined blessing of the Tensigen, Eye of Truth, Eye of Holy Light, and other passive or active skills, the harsh environment in front of him naturally could not cause him any trouble. Therefore, Liang Yue walked while also multitasking, thinking about the development ideas for lightning, fire, and wood. With his extensive knowledge from his previous life, he could naturally think that the best deduction plan for this innate affinity was to move towards the direction of domain. In Liang Yue's view, the so-called domain is a means of projecting one's own spiritual power and energy into the real world, or more specifically, constantly feeding back to the outside of the body. The purpose is to make the environment within a certain range around oneself more suitable for the exertion of one's own strength. So, according to this idea, what Liang Yue has to do now is to expand the power of the innate affinity of lightning, fire, and wood in a planned way. With this thought in mind, with just a thought, the innate affinity, which had long lost its appearance as a withered tree in tender buds, immediately appeared behind him. With the advancement of Liang Yue's own cultivation and the system's fusion of spiritual power and true ki, the current lightning, fire, and wood has also grown considerably. The small tree that was 2 meters high when he used it to fight the 10 Tails in the Fourth Ninja World War has now grown to 5 or 6 meters. The branches and trunks are thick, shaped like a coiling dragon, with a kind of high, spirited and upright momentum in its beauty. The lush canopy is like a golden umbrella, and when it shakes gently, large swathes of bright blue electric arcs will burst out between the leaves and branches. In addition, deep inside the branches and trunks of this lightning, fire, and wood, there are also streams of magma-colored flames constantly flowing. It's just that, because of the addition of the power of the heavenly tribulation before, the original balanced power structure of lightning, fire, and wood has been skewed. As a result, the power of thunder is now rampant, and the territory occupied by the flame has been further compressed to a very small area. This situation is estimated to continue for a period of time in the future without the introduction of external assistance at this moment. As soon as this innate affinity of lightning, fire, and wood came out. The originally dim evil cave was immediately illuminated to the fullest. Not far away, several fallen ones gathered together, as well as a fallen one shaman, had already been attracted by the light and began to howl and walk towards Liang Yue. But in the next moment, with a zilla explosion, a bright blue electric arc suddenly burst out, and the violent power instantly turned the group of fallen ones and shamans into fly ash, smoke and dust swirled. Scattered all over the ground. Liang Yue was not surprised by this result. After all, in this thunderbolt, in addition to the general meaning of lightning, it also contains a certain amount of heavenly tribulation. This is not something that the lowest level monsters in the dark dungeon in front of you can contend with. Taking a glance at the ashes remaining on the ground, Liang Yue frowned slightly at this moment, looking a little dissatisfied, and his eyes were shining brightly. Expansion is not just a simple launch in addition to the externalization and extension of power. What is more important is to maintain a relatively stable area. This concept and idea sounds a bit familiar. Maybe I can learn from the operating principle of the cultivation object control technique. While muttering to himself, Liang Yue continued to walk towards the depths of the cave. The evil cave in the game dungeon in front of him is not very complicated, and with the assistance of the Tensigan, the monsters in the cave are naturally even more nowhere to hide. So, after only 5 minutes or so, Liang Yue had already slowly arrived at the area where the quest boss Corpse Sapphire was located. In the process, Liang Yue also exploded more than 300 gold coins from the monsters, a blue cloth armor, a blue shield, several white javelins, throwing knives, and several bottles of elementary red and blue potions. Except for the potions and gold coins, the rest were all thrown into the space of Amma no Iwado facing Corpse Sapphire and the few minions beside it. Not far away, Liang Yue was not in a hurry to attack at this time, but instead found a rock of suitable height in a corner of the cave and sat down with one hand supporting his chin. The whole person fell into deep thought again. Chapter 425 Bloodbird. The principle of telekinesis is based on spiritual power and mental strength, using them to manipulate the air and indirectly achieve the purpose of controlling objects. The domain, or rather, the preliminary manifestation of the domain-like power I envision, requires the power of thunder, fire, and wood as its foundation. To be manipulated is a substitute for air because thunder, fire, and wood are essentially the powers derived from the fusion and exploration of my spirit with the natural world. Their relationship with me is much closer, therefore, manipulating them is much easier and more effective than what telekinesis can achieve. Furthermore, each of the three attributes, thunder, fire, and wood, possesses considerable power in itself. So once manipulated, their power will naturally surpass that of air. What did I just say? Thunder, fire, and wood are essentially products of my mental strength interacting and exploring with the natural world, mental strength interacting with nature. In other words, a product of mutual influence with the environment. Therefore, whether it's the creation of the domain or the expansion of thunder, fire, and wood, the key lies in mental strength. Yes, with a prerequisite of having the innate intention as a medium, mental strength is the true determining factor. Thinking of this, the corners of Liang Yue's mouth curved slightly, and a pair of bright eyes suddenly burst out with two dazzling rays of light, as if electricity was generated in the void. Afterward, he began to reread the content and knowledge in his mind related to the innate intention of thunder, fire, and wood. As for the mental strength that someone regarded as the key, Liang Yue certainly didn't lack it. In fact, as a proper foundation establishment stage cultivator, with the assistance of the two advanced paths of an adventurer and a mage, Liang Yue's mental strength was definitely much stronger than that of ordinary foundation establishment stage cultivators. This fundamental condition can be said to be exceptionally solid. What he lacked before was nothing more than a flash of inspiration during the period of confusion before creating the technique. Now that he has figured out the key, he will naturally be blessed with inspiration and his thoughts will become clear. After a long time, Liang Yue regained his senses from his contemplation. Raising his head, he saw that at some unknown time, the Corpse Sapphire and its gang, who were originally some distance away from him, had gradually moved to his front. Good. It just so happens that I have gained some insights into the domain, and now I can use you to test it out. Thunder, fire, wood expand. As soon as Liang Yue's words fell, the originally solid thunder, fire, and wood light and shadow behind him instantly turned into a glimmer of light and directly drilled into his body. But correspondingly, the next moment, a piece of sign light suddenly spread out, starting from Liang Yue as the origin and center, quickly covering in all directions in the blink of an eye. It had enveloped the Corpse Sapphire and his party not far away. Puff, puff, puff. The next moment, accompanied by the sound of flesh tearing, the Corpse Sapphire, as the boss of the evil cave, was pierced into a riddled mess by wooden spears that seemed to protrude from the void. Needless to say, after suffering such a heavy blow, this zombie boss was naturally unable to survive after the health bar was cleared. Its entire body instantly shattered into countless pieces. Several pieces of equipment, potions, and a pile of gold coins fell out. Liang Yue was not in a hurry to attack the zombie minions around the corpse Sapphire, but left them for further experiments next. Although the application of wooden spears can bring the most direct damage to the target, the wood attribute itself has natural limitations. After all, even the hardest wood cannot compare with metal. Its best attack method should be in the aspects of entanglement, poison, devouring, digestion, absorption, extraction, transformation, parasitism, etc. In addition, in some higher-level worlds, when the wood attribute is developed to a certain stage, it seems that the thunder of wood, and even the laws of life, can be born. However, that is another story. In short, Liang Yue was very curious at this moment, just like a child who has just received a beloved toy. His thoughts are flowing, and he can't wait to use the wood attribute in the thunder, fire, and wood to experiment on those zombies. As for why Liang Yue only showed the power of the wood attribute at this time, first, the little monsters in front of him were too useless to withstand too many attacks. His thunder attribute contained the power of heavenly tribulation, which was always a one-hit kill. The previous fallen ones were a lesson. Secondly, the fire attribute part has been suppressed a bit recently and is not very effective. It is already a bit stretched to just hold on to that little territory, so it is not suitable to move it. It seems that I have to find some flames with good power to replenish them as soon as possible. That flame spirit art can be used. This thought flashed through Liang Yue's mind, and then he began to use his own wood-based power to operate on the zombies. What 5 flower binding, void hanging, what rooting in the body, growing into tree, absorbing life essence, transforming into extra spiritual power, and so on. Liang Yue, who walked out of the cave, was not in a hurry to return to the camp, but followed another path and directly stepped onto the cold plains. After opening the teleport point next to the road, he returned to the rogue encampment. He handed in the task and received a skill point from Akira. Since Liang Yue doesn't have the Diablo 2 character template now, he naturally can't use this thing. Fortunately, the system is considerate and temporarily keeps it for him. After receiving the next Blood Raven mission from Kashaya, he teleported back to the cold plains again. Speaking of which, Liang Yue originally didn't plan to do this mercenary mission. After all, a rogue archer is almost just a drag to him, but considering the Diablo professional template after he clears the game, and the extra reward mentioned by the system, Liang Yue felt that it would be best for him to honestly complete the process completely. After all, he doesn't know what the system's evaluation criteria for rewards are. If it's just because of his negligence, a certain task is not completed, resulting in an unsatisfactory result, then it must be a huge loss. So, with this concern, Liang Yue quickly passed through the cold plains and came to a burial ground scattered with sporadic bones. In the center of the map, there is a cemetery building located there, and in the center of the rows of tombstones, there is also a thick tree growing. At this moment, the tree tops are covered with dry bones, and next to the tree, there is a demon archer wearing red and white armor. After taking a look at the mission target from a distance, Liang Yue then covered his wood attribute domain. At this moment, he whistled leisurely, gesturing wildly at the big tree from a distance of 50 or 60 meters. The next moment, countless winding vines suddenly protruded from the trunk, and quietly tied the Blood Raven firmly and hung it in midair. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.